This is Rod Mahood, your in-game voice of the Niagara IceDogs, and you're listening to the Dog Pound Podcast on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your podcast source for all game analysis, team interviews, and up-to-date news regarding the Niagara IceDogs.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special edition of the Dog Pound Podcast right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. This is our Day 2 OHL Priority Selection Draft live special right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network and the Dog Pound Podcast. Make sure you're hitting that like button, smash and subscribe if you're listening on the YouTube side of things, and if you're listening live on Spreaker, give us some love over there as well. And again, you can follow us on Twitter at Armchair GM Pod, as well as our Dog Pound Podcast at Dog Pound Podcast. Check out our website, armchairgmsports.com, and find us on whatever audio or video platform you're listening or watching your podcast at. We are there for you guys on demand with all of our great shows. But today we are here for Day 2 of the OHL Draft, and we've got a long 3 hours. So, guys, the alarm was set early this morning.
I wasn't expecting that.
The alarm was set early on a nice Saturday morning because the Ontario Hockey League decided that we wanted to go start our day at 9 o'clock with a Day 2 draft.
I mean, we should be used to that. We both work early morning jobs. I think we're fine now. I think back in the day we didn't.
Yeah, that was definitely not good. But anyways, guys, we're only in audio today, but that's because we have a lot of guests lined up for this morning over the 3 hours. We've got 6 guests, call-ins throughout the show, so those will be very interesting. And got people that cover the Ontario Hockey League and the Niagara IceDogs more specifically. And since you guys can't see us, and if you didn't know, if you felt like if this is the first time you're listening, my name is Brandon. You can follow me on Twitter at Caputs13_AGM, and you can follow my co-host who you just heard there. He is the one and only Kyle.
What's that, Brandon? You got to speak up. I'm wearing a towel.
At just Kyle51, wearing a towel apparently. But
hey, we're not on camera. I get to wear what I want today. I just figured a towel is very necessary.
Sure. So, guys, with that said, we're gonna just kind of quickly discuss the first 2 rounds of the OHL. Well, I guess 3 rounds technically, but the IceDogs didn't have a 3rd round pick. But they were able to select 2 players last night to add to the fold here. And before we get our first guest on, we're going to talk about those 2 guys. We're going to talk about picks as they happen, as, you know, however exciting that is with, major junior hockey players. Again, we're not sitting here saying we've watched all these players, but that's why, we just want to have...
You never know, right? Like, we could draft someone literally late round and ends up being, like, a star, right? They could develop crazy... adapt to the OHL style, ended up going in like the 1st or 2nd round in the NHL. We don't know, right? So I know, like mostly when you see players get drafted in the 1st and 2nd round in the NHL, they were high picks in the OHL. But there's the odd one that are late OHL picks. So you never know. So
Niagara selected 2 players, and as far as today goes, they are on the clock at number 74.
Yeah, it's already started. Hamilton drafted a goalie just now.
Okay, so Niagara's up in about 7 picks. So they're up at 71. Our first guest is coming on at 9:15. That is the play-by-play or radio play-by-play voice of the Niagara IceDogs, a longtime radio voice, Ted Lehman.
Hey, Teddy.
So yeah, Ted.
Mr. Rogers.
I'm sure he's got some great stories for us for the time that he's going to be on, and he could probably be on for the whole 3 hours telling us stories. But unfortunately, this isn't the Ted Lehman show. But
yeah, it's not.
No, but we'll be excited to have Ted on. Obviously, he's, other than the 1 year that he missed, he's been the radio voice of the Niagara IceDogs for the entire time of their existence. So he's got some very good insight, and I'm sure he wants to talk about some of the drafts over the years and players over the years that he was interested in. As far as, I mean, he's seen everybody. I mean, every player that's played on this IceDogs team, he's seen them and covered them at some point. So
he's got a great sweater selection.
He does. So, yeah. So the host, I guess, of GiantFM and
the
Country.
Host with the most.
Then Country 89 for the IceDogs radio coverage will be joining us. And then we've also got a lineup of other guests. And if you guys want to know the full guest lineup, you can check it out on YouTube. We've got actually in Spreaker, we've got the description with the times and when every guest is going to be coming on today. So if you guys are wondering that, it's on there. Check the descriptions of Spreaker or YouTube. So, Kyle, before we get Ted on, and it's 9:06 here, so let's quickly discuss the two picks that the IceDogs had to start the day yesterday, and that was obviously the selection at 4th overall, which was the guy that I had picked them to take on our last Dog Pound podcast.
Crazy. Yeah.
Sam Dickinson from the Toronto Marauders of the GTHL. Kyle, what are your first impressions and thoughts on adding hopefully a top pair defenseman to this team in a year or two?
I think that was a solid pick. We took the best defenseman available. He was the best defenseman going into this OHL draft. So, I mean, we got the best out of a crappy situation where we finished last in the OHL, but it's the first year to do the lottery. We end up going all the way to 4. So we can see and look at the positives out of this one, right? So we end up dropping the 4. Misa, exceptional status player, but again, we kind of, I don't know if we talked about this on the last episode or off the air. Basically, if you look at an exceptional status player, you're not going to get a big shelf life out of them because guaranteed they'll be gone by the end of the second year. So, because they'll get drafted and then, that'll be it. So this is actually a really smart pick by the IceDogs. He's touted as an exceptional two-way defender. When I was reading, as soon as I seen him get drafted, I went and started reading. I dug deep about him. Apparently, he's really good in the puck. I seen a couple of videos from that training I forget what it's called, but I sent you those 2 clips.
Yeah.
Of that program that a lot of the OHL players go in and train at. He looks great. He's touted as has excellent vision on the ice as well. And the one thing I read is that his scouting points, I guess this I couldn't open it because I can't pay for the service, but apparently he had a lot of scouting points that you see in players in the OHL that eventually develop into first-round players. So I know that's a lot of pressure on a kid just coming into the OHL, but hey, if he develops properly, we could have a really great defense. Like the last defenseman that went to the NHL for the IceDogs, if I'm not mistaken, was Vince Dunn, right?
I'm sorry, I'm posting the Twitter stuff. What was your question?
The last defenseman to go into the NHL for the IceDogs was Vince Dunn, right?
I think so. I don't think there was any after that.
I can't remember. We'll have to ask Ted. But Sam Dickinson, I think, is going to be a really great defenseman for the IceDogs. Coming at a great size, too, 6'2", 192 pounds already. He's already got a big body, but the one thing I kept seeing about him was he's a solid two-way defenseman. It was always two-way. So I think that's a crucial part that the IceDogs are going to need on the D side. Now that you're losing Dakota Betts, you're going to have someone's going to fill in that veteran role. I'm assuming Landon Cato is going to fill in that his spot, or Enright. And then you got the rookies that we just seen this year, but then you have Sam Dickinson coming in, and if he can come in and be a benefactor right away, their D core is going to be really good. So
yeah, and again, I think they really needed to add another defenseman. I think that was the one spot. I think the forwards, they've got some guys that, and again, it's a logjam up there. So I think adding another strong defenseman, like you said, with some of the guys moving out, I think they really needed to add Sam Dickinson here, and I was really happy that they were able to get the number 1 defenseman at that 4, because obviously there were some great forwards up front. But I think this was the smart move by the IceDogs brass to kind of go ahead and take the best defenseman available here from obviously a good program with the Toronto Marlboros.
Exactly. It's just every scouting thing that we got on him. I guess we'll give a shout outs to someone who reached out to us. I guess a fan of the show.
Yep.
So shout outs to you, Reno Berardi.
Yep.
Hopefully we said that right. But gave us some scouting profiles on him from various websites like Sports Illustrated Profiling, Pucks Prospects, and all that stuff. So thank you for that. Appreciate that. But yeah, like from what I'm reading, it's all about two-way. His two-way game is a big thing. His hockey IQ is extremely high for a kid his age, which is also a good thing. You want to see that, when you see a kid at his age from AAA coming into the OHL, if they have a really high hockey IQ, that usually translates to them adapting to the OHL game a lot faster rather than a lot of the other players going into the OHL.
Yeah, or playing as a first-year player.
Yeah, or playing as a first-year player, exactly. And apparently he has had very few weaknesses, meaning I've seen a lot of scouting profiles as well saying that he doesn't have a lot of work to work on, which is a good thing. So there's really a lot to work on him. He's almost a very complete player. So I think the IceDogs got a very big steal out of this one. OHL Central Scouting actually says Sam is an elite and complete defenseman that has the ability to control a game and has done it numerous times with the Toronto Marbles this year. He is a powerful skater, which I've seen those clip videos. He is a really good skater that uses his mobility to defend and create offense. He's a very good has very good puck skills, makes good crisp outlet passes. He can hold off forecheckers as he protects the puck and isn't afraid to join the rush at the right time. So I think the IceDogs got a very, very, very good player. Apparently, he was very tough to play against in the GTHL as well. So I'm excited for this player, man. I'm very, very excited for Sam Dickinson. I have probably the same amount of hype that I had for Pano Fimis. And look, Pano Fimis turned out to be insanely good so far. And Pano's just going to keep getting bigger, man. We're going to have 2 solid first-round picks here along with the others.
Yep, and I've got the epic music playing because Niagara is now on the clock.
Oh, wow. We've already made it that far?
There you go. That's the NFL draft. You got to add that in there.
I mean, I don't want to talk about the NFL draft because I don't know what the hell my team was doing. They're out to lunch and just said, yeah, that guy looks good.
Well, Niagara's pick. This is the pick I believe that they got from Oshawa for Cam Butler. Or wait, no, it's not. Never mind. It's not a second-round pick. Guys, it's still early in the morning for me. I'm sorry. But
I'll see if I can see what it says. It doesn't say anything on
It's from Oshawa, but I can't remember what it was from.
There's no tag on it on the database, so it's there. We got it somehow.
Yeah, if you guys want to make fun of me for that one, go ahead. But Niagara's up on the clock, and we're gonna get Ted's live reaction probably to this pick for Niagara here because we're still waiting. And I'm trying to post the tweet out, but
So there was a goalie taken right before this one, John Parsons. I wonder.
You just always wonder if somebody is
related, right?
Every time. I'm pretty sure the Kingston Frontenacs took Jordan Frasca's brother last night in the first round, and I'm like, wow, there's a shock. But Niagara's on the clock here at 71, and again, they didn't have a third-round pick, but we'll talk more about their second-round pick a little later on. Kevin He was the player selected second with their second-round pick, but we'll talk about him in a little bit when we got some more time to kind of fill here. We got Ted, who's going to be calling in very shortly. Ted Lehman, the longtime radio voice of the Niagara IceDogs, now for Country 89 and GiantFM.com.
But as of Sam Dickinson, you were. I remember you were texting me the whole time. Like I was like, oh, maybe this guy looks good. He could do good for IceDogs. Each time you went back at me and went, nope, Sam Dickinson.
Sam Dickinson.
It was like me with Samuel Douglas Najim. Like, nope, they need to sign this kid. Nope, they need to sign this kid. So Niagara has their pick.
Okay.
They did send it in. So almost like a hometown boy. So from the Niagara North Stars under 16 AAA team, they chose Andrew Vermeulen. I don't know if I'm going to say that right. Vermeulen.
Okay.
A centerman, 6'1", 187. But from the Niagara North Stars, so from St. Catharines.
There we go. And that'll lead perfectly into us talking to our first guest, and I'm going to add him right now, if you guys can hear that lovely dial pad on Skype.
It sounds like a horrible robot from like a crappy movie.
So, as we wait for Ted to join the call, it is now 9:15, and Niagara has picked 71.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm going to say Vermeulen. And it's Eulen, however you say that.
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine.
I'm bad with names. I don't know why you go by my guess.
And we are joined right now on the Thrive Fantasy Hotline by the one and only, the play-by-play voice of the Niagara IceDogs on GiantFM and Country89.com, the one and only Ted Lehman. Ted, good morning, my friend.
Good morning. How are you?
We are fantastic. You're joined by Brandon and Kyle today. So, Ted, Niagara just picked at 71. They took a kid named Andrew Vermeulen from the Niagara North Stars, so they took a local product here in the 4th round. But again, I know that you've been covering this team for a very, very long time, probably since the Stone Age. But what have been some of your favorite draft memories over the years with the Niagara IceDogs?
Well, if you're looking back over the many years, excuse me, not getting emotional, just getting choked up.
Oh, okay.
If you look back over the many years, there's been way too many memories of what's gone on draft day. But you always think back to basically the first draft and Freddie Hamilton, because that led way to the second draft and Dougie Hamilton. And when you kind of squeeze in the middle, then GM Dave Brown, merchandising, if we can put it that way, Lucas Lesio into multi-picks. That was the beginning of the IceDogs' first championship team, which would happen in 2012.
Oh, right. That's right.
Yep. And again, the 15th year anniversary tag. Can you believe that it's been 15 years since this team moved from Mississauga?
There are times when it seems like it was 15 minutes. There's times, and it's usually in the trying times when it seems like it's been 15 decades. But it's worth remembering when you look back at 15 years. I think, Brandon, you and I had the conversation. There's a minimum of 3 teams in the Eastern Conference that in the time the IceDogs have been in the league have not even won an Eastern Conference. And I think those 3 teams, I don't know that they've been to the championship of an Eastern Conference. So you're talking about an IceDogs franchise that's got 2 of those to show for their efforts, plus a 3rd appearance in the Eastern Conference final. So there's a lot for fans to kind of remember and be proud about with this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, again, like, with a draft like this, Ted, and have it being so many rounds, like, in your experience with this team, again, like maybe the 1st or 2nd round picks, but when you're getting into the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and beyond into the teens, like, just how accurate are the scouting reports, and how just, I mean, we can look at the drafts through the years here, but just, how often do you think that those players end up developing into Ontario Hockey League players, or how many of those guys do you think that are just taken as a flyer and hopeful, or guys that you might hope that end up committing to the OHL but end up going to other leagues or something like that?
Okay, history again. And a lot of this has happened on defense because it's the toughest position to learn. I'll even put it above goaltending. It's the hardest position to master, so therefore it's kind of the toughest position to draft. I'll throw out some names like Mike Schwint, who scored the first goal of the IceDogs' second season. And he was really stay-at-home because it took him almost a lifetime to get his second goal, and it was for the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. But he was a heart-and-soul kind of guy. Shane Rover, one of those later picks. Justin McPherson, which gave the IceDogs a few great years on defense where he was sent out to Kings Kitchener. But one of the great ones of all time was, again, different GM, this time Marty Williamson, and I can't remember the year of the draft, but just sitting there. And we'll talk about the number of rounds in just a sec, but 15th round, it's closing in on 6 o'clock. They're going to have a barbecue. Thank heavens this is over. Draft celebration. They want the day to be over. Marty just says, pick the best guy there. So they take Blake Siebenaller.
Oh, wow.
Out of the U.S., never expecting to see him. And there you go again, another part of a championship team along with the likes of Vince Dunn. Blake Siebenaller, one of almost Mr. Irrelevant in the draft, comes to be one of the most relevant IceDogs. But that was a question I had years ago, was when you have leagues with 7-round drafts, why does the OHL have 15 rounds? It's really a simple answer. Somebody said, would you like Kitchener and London to have their pick of all the free agents?
Yeah. Man. Kyle, go ahead. I'm trying to post this.
I do have to ask you a question, Ted, because we were just briefly talking about it before, and off the top of my head, I think I'm correct, but I know you probably would correct me. So, obviously the IceDogs taking Sam Dickinson at number 4 in the first round yesterday. I was going on about defensemen who moved on to the NHL from playing with the IceDogs. Vince Dunn, I believe, was the last one to be drafted into the NHL from the IceDogs, correct?
You would have that one right.
Okay, awesome. So I knew it. I thought for some reason that there was someone after him, but for the life of me, couldn't think of it, and that's probably because he didn't exist. So there you go.
Well, it's funny, too, because you look at the fact that we just watched the first season of Alec Leonard, really nice young man, And I have to preface that with, this is the first IceDogs team that I spent next to no team time with while I was with them, because you just didn't get the one-on-one time. Thank you very much, COVID. But Alec Leonard, a couple of times with him, and I said to him, I said, it's fun watching you play, and you bring to mind for me a Vince Dunn. Well, he perked up, oh, thank you very much. That's really nice of you to say. But those are the kind of things, 15 years, you look back and you see players now coming up and you go, you remind me of that guy and you remind me of this guy. And you only hope to have the kind of success the players before them have had.
God.
And I look at a guy like Ryan Mantha as well. I believe, Ted, that he leads the record for most shots in a season by not only a defenseman but any Niagara IceDog. I believe he has like over 300 shots in a season. What do you think with somebody like that, who obviously hasn't gone on to have a great NHL career, but somebody who obviously was the captain and led this team from the back end? So how important is having a top defenseman in the Ontario Hockey League for teams like this and for Niagara moving forward if they want to have success and be a championship contending team?
Well, you have to have the discussion first of top defensemen. We'll get to that in a sec. The thing about Ryan Mantha, we had a discussion this year. Rob Hubbard, we do his In the Doghouse feature at home games, and we talked about, with the new captain being named late in the season, we talked about the fact of the best IceDogs captains ever. And Hubbs picked Anthony DeFrugia, not a bad pick, but I picked Ryan Mantha because he captained the youngest IceDogs team ever. Remember, again, historically, he came to the IceDogs with an injury. We got to know him a little bit, and my daughter welcomed him up to our broadcast booth area because he was the Maytag repairman. He was the lonely guy sitting by himself. And when he first came to the IceDogs, they put him out as a forward, just to get him acclimated to the speed and everything. And defensemen, I think, love that because it's the old adage, better to give than to receive, especially with body contact. So the unfortunate thing for Ryan Mantha, his hockey life got bookended with an injury almost starting out the journey, and an injury ended his career as well. And in between, the thing that made Ryan Mantha amazing was, I don't pretend to know what these coaches and general managers know because, quite frankly, I don't know what they know. But you'd look at Ryan Mantha and go, why aren't you covering this guy? Like, why can't you stop him? And there was a couple of reasons why. Very short backswing, heavy wrists. So he didn't take a lot of time to get that thing off his stick, and it made the power play more effective than ever. But let's circle back to your point. You talked about defensemen. Okay, Ryan Mantha, hard hitter, good in his own zone, and he had that shot. You look at a Vince Dunn, who wasn't going to blast the puck by anybody, but he was an amazing puck mover. Blake Siebenaller just flew up and down the ice and put pressure on every part of the other team's defense. And Dougie Hamilton's gift that got overlooked, I'd never seen anything that big in my life, who could sneak in from the point on the power play. Again, you got a body that big. It's not like he can tiptoe through your four-man box no matter how you got it set up, but somehow he managed to do it. And, of course, Dougie Hamilton was all-world. He did everything well. And so there's different ways and paths for defensemen. As much as they say now it's not so much physicality, it's just skating. And yes, it is puck movement. And that's one of the things when they talk about Sam Dickinson is that kind of sandpaper he brings in, which they're going to have to replace with the loss of two overagers. But it's also the fact that he can jump up and add something into the rush as well. So it's hope springs eternal, looking forward to what he's going to bring to the IceDogs.
Yeah, that a good segue to my next question for you, Ted, is obviously watching this team, you missed out on the last year, but this year coming back, and just what have you thought of the progression of this team, the double cohort draft class coming in, and just how much do you think that they've learned this year and they're going to take into next year as they kind of look to go back up the standings? Obviously, they finished last this year, so any sort of improvement will be good, but I don't think that they're just looking to finish 18th or 19th again. I think this team is really looking to compete next year. So what have you saw from the growth of, like you mentioned, guys like Alec Leonard and some of these other first-year players, because we just had so many of them that all played their rookie season last year because of the pandemic wiping out the 2021 season?
Well, 3 words: forced to grow. Because I don't think when they scripted this season last August, the movie kind of played out the way the script was written, because they expected more from veteran players. They expected to have more veteran presence in goal, more veteran presence up front. They expected more production from different players, and then came to the decision. And I had the conversation with GM Joey Burke. It's not Tank Nation. He said, no, they had to get to the point where they put those younger guys out, because in the OHL with that 4 or 5 year window, if you're not producing and you're making mistakes, which hockey's predicated on. I mean, it's why we love the OHL, why we love junior hockey. There's more mistakes than there is in the pros. It's less sanitized. But if you get into a situation where you're going to have mistakes anyways, why the heck not put the young guys out? So they were forced to grow. And if you go through some of the players, I think Pano Femis did a lot more than people are going to realize. And yeah, he's got the rookie assist record in IceDogs colors. But we made the comparison when Akil Thomas came up. They looked at him and said, we can't start him at center because the physicality, defensive play is going to eat him alive. He started on the wing in his first year. Pano Femis went right to center. I think they expected Andrew Wysick to learn more in the press box. Well, he learned it on the go on the ice. Alec Leonard was kind of the same situation. More of the forwards up front. We saw, wide-eyed kids early on, and then we saw players making recognitions as they go through it. It really was just forced to grow. So with only 2 players not returning and drafting a defenseman at number 1 of the great currencies in the OHL for any administration is defensemen. They're going to have the room to be able to make some more moves to augment this lineup. It's just the ceiling for the team. We saw what North Bay did, and North Bay went from, number 20 to top 5 in the OHL, and they're going to challenge Hamilton, I believe, for the Eastern Conference. What do we also love about junior hockey? It can happen that fast. You have to have some things fall in place.
And you look at just the amount of things that happened, Ted, this year. I mean, you were on the road with the team, so every road game. So you saw, the amount of injuries that they had, the suspensions, the COVID shutdown with the illnesses that ran through the team, and then obviously just having to dress only 4 defensemen multiple times this season. Have you ever seen a team like this in Niagara that has had to go through so many trials and tribulations of so many players being out of the lineup where they could only dress 4 defensemen for multiple games?
Well, I can remember 2 instances. I remember a Thanksgiving weekend going into Guelph where Andrew Agozzino and Alex Friesen, 2 mainstays, 5-year IceDogs, ended up playing defense because they were so depleted. And then the only game I think I saw during the year I was on holidays, I was in Erie watching Ivan Lodnia and Akil Thomas play defense because the lineup was depleted. But if you don't mind, we'll take a step back and talk about COVID. I said this at the end of the last broadcast on Country 89 and Giant FM. At the end of the last broadcast, I talked about, and don't ask me why, I just spilled out, the human cost of COVID, because as adults sometimes who haven't experienced it firsthand, you sit there and go, okay, wash your hands and sanitize your hands and don't shake hands and wear your mask at all. You're going to be fine. I didn't realize the human toll of the pandemic until it hit us in the face, where the IceDogs played a game December 16th, 7-6 overtime win in North Bay, loaded up the bus, all happy, drove to Sudbury, bedded down. One of the players played with sniffles. He got up the next day. He had every symptom you can think about. And so smartly, it was really great work by the whole coaching staff. And again, I tip my hat to Billy Burke, to Joey Burke, Jody Hall, all of them, Sean Tickle. They were right there right away. They made the decisions, okay, this player is out of here. They put him in a vehicle, masked him up, sent him back home. And then 5 minutes before we were leaving for the arena, they ordered testing. And 1 player comes back positive. But before that happened, I watched 2 players have to go outside because they're going to be sick to their stomachs. I forgot these are 16 to 20-year-olds, and they're sitting there 8 days before Christmas going, am I going to give this to Grandma? Will I get to see my family? Am I going to have a Christmas? If they're American, can I go across the border? Will I get home? I didn't realize the kind of mental stress, because these young guys, we only see them as hockey players, and when they get on the ice, when you see them as human beings, that was a tough thing to go through mentally. And I know all the teams had to go through it, but that was the firsthand experience I had just before, it turned out to be a 13-day Christmas break.
Brennan Caputo and Kyle Aikett with the play-by-play radio voice of the Niagara IceDogs, Ted Lehman. Ted, before you leave us today, a lot of great stories and a lot of great insight. I know you can probably have your own 3-hour podcast and it still wouldn't be enough, but what are you hoping to see from the rest of the draft for the IceDogs? They picked up the top defenseman. They pick up another player as well so far on day 2, but just what are you kind of hoping that they do the rest of the way, and kind of what are you hoping that the competition is going to be like in the summertime and going into training camp?
Well, somebody has got to replace the captain, and I'm not saying that's going to be Sam Dickinson, but at 6'2" and 190, it's kind of a nice start.
Yeah.
But has somebody replaced Liam Van Loon yet? He became power forward. He became speed coming off the left wing.
Oh, man, so
Is that guy
fast.
in the dressing room? Maybe. It might be that guy. If he's not there, then basically that's the player I'd like to see them get. But it's quite simple right now. When you are the 20th ranked team coming out of the season, you get the best players you possibly can, and then you fill it in. If you end up with an abundance of something, somebody's out there going to be nipping at your heels to make a deal.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, the Van Loon slot is going to be something to see who kind of fills in that slot. I just remember, like you just mentioned, his speed. Just watching from the press box every night how he can go from 0 to 100 in 3 steps was just incredible to see. And I hope I can't say that we have someone on the team that will be like an exact copy of a Liam Van Loon, but it'll be interesting to see if someone from this draft class steps in or someone that's already on the team that steps in and takes the role that Van Loon left with us.
Yeah, you would be hoping that he would have a lasting impression on somebody that's been on this roster and sent for his time here. But Ted, do you want to go ahead and plug anything before you head off to? I'm sure your agent's giving you a call for whatever else you got going on. So, is there anything else you want to leave us with?
Well, I haven't written the book yet, so wait till I get that done.
Right,
so,
we need a copy first.
The only thing I have is the title, and it's called The Oldest Guy on the Bus. After that, we'll just fill in the rest of it.
As long as we get the first copy, I'm happy with that.
Oh, no problem. I mean, you're going to have to get it to your lawyers. So
Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the longtime voice of the Niagara IceDogs now for GiantFM and Country 89, the one and only Ted Lehman. Thanks so much for joining us today, sir, and I'm sure we'll be talking again very soon.
been a pleasure. Happy potting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted.
So there he is, the one and only Ted Lehman, ladies and gentlemen.
What a man.
He
Didn't
is.
ask him about the sweaters, though.
Yeah.
Kept it strictly hockey.
He's got a big sweater collection.
He'll
but
come back on the pod one day because we're happy potting right now, and we're going to talk about the sweaters.
He could talk to us about a lot of things, but Kyle, Niagara hasn't been up in a while. But
No, they're not up until the 6th round, and we initially saw 2 6th-round picks, but it looks like they traded one of them away, so now they only have one.
there you go.
It looks like they traded it to, I just seen it, it said from Niagara, to Windsor at 107, so we're not picking until in the 6th round at 121.
Interesting.
So we got a ways away, but the Oshawa's about to pick now in the 5th round with a pick that we've traded to them. So I'm keeping an eye on the picks from other teams that say from Niagara. Like the last one was from Oshawa in the 4th round. They took Ethan Toms, a centerman from the Quinte Red Devils.
Oh, there you go. Where's the Detroit Honey Baked at?
You know what? I'm gonna take a quick.
Last year they were all over the place.
Yeah, they must have had like a big. I mean, I see the Cleveland Barons, which is hilarious because that's like a youth team in the USA, and the Cleveland Barons were a team in the NHL at one point for a very short stint. I think it was in between. It had to have been in between the Minnesota and Dallas conversion, was it not? Because I believe they're in the Dallas Stars history. Which is
I love
weird.
how those histories get moved around, like with the franchise.
Oh, when you play like the NHL games and like you go to like the Dallas Stars jerseys, you end up on like the Cleveland Barons, and you're like, who?
Yeah.
I don't see the Detroit Honey Baked anywhere, so they must not have had a good year this year.
Yeah, I guess not. It looked like it was the GTHL draft this year. A lot of those.
So they took Oshawa just took a defenseman from Niagara's pick that we traded to them. A right defenseman, Lucas Rodriguez from the Mississauga Senators. Who
Elrod.
that seems to be the team this year where a lot of players are getting picked. I've seen them all over the board. Mississauga centers have really become like a staple in the last couple of years for producing like great AAA players.
Yeah, I think they have. And guys, sorry if my mic a little bit. I'm looking on another.
Where'd you go?
for my other. I'm on another screen for my other. But Michael Misa and Malcolm Spence, both from the Mississauga Senators, went the first and second overall. So
they're like the junior Canadians of Panofimus's year.
Yeah, and the junior Canadians obviously had somebody.
They had three straight picks, 5, 6, and 7. They were all from the junior Canadians.
And they even had somebody end up going to the USHL, which will one of our guests, Austin Broad, will talk a little bit more about Michael Hodge going to the USHL.
Yeah, and that was so Kitchener just did they just we'll just take him anyways kind of pick and hope for the best?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess that's sometimes what happens, right? Same with Adam Fantilli. I mean, he was in the US.
That's true.
He ended up going one pick ahead of London. So, I would have done that too.
That's not a shot.
If I was Saginaw, I would have done it too. I'm just throwing that out there. But
I do want to throw out a shout out to anyone that's downloaded the app from our last episode and is now listening live. So thank you guys for doing that and listening to us today. Or if you're watching YouTube side, which the one and only Mississauga fan that's in that building said go Mississauga in our live chat. So shout outs to their one fan over there.
Here is a live sound of the Paramount Center down in Mississauga.
Playoff time. You can barely hear that person that said go Mississauga in our live chat. Barely hear them.
Yeah.
It's rocking over there. The building is shaking.
So I guess it looks like we're going to have to defer Kevin He once again because we're about to have our next guest on. So I'm going to, again, guys, if it's probably going to be your favorite.
It's the best part of the whole show is the dial tone.
Is it?
Here we go. It sounds like a crappy B movie from like the 90s. Then like a robot horror movie.
Oh, man. So, again, just to update here, Brandon Caputo and Kyle Aikett, we are here reacting to for the Niagara IceDogs, which there haven't been many so far, but
we're getting there.
There's one. And we'll be having guest call-ins throughout the show, and that is what I'm doing right now. I am going to try and get our second guest on the line here.
Everyone's excited. They're waiting for it.
Oop.
Oh.
Guys, we're on the air live, so I mean, again,
I am.
This is stuff that you would get rid of post edit.
I am Destructor. I'm come to kill the earth.
Yeah, that's literally what it sounds like. But guys, just deal with it, okay?
Just deal with it.
Just deal with it. It's a dial tone.
Anyways,
second guest here, but
until you do call him, I'm gonna say one last thing about Sam Dickinson. That Ted nailed it right on the head. That he's talking about the last time we had defensemen that could hit a caliber his size and the ability to jump in on the rush and on the power play. I think we had he adds to the. Basically, Ted added more to the fact that what a great pick this was by the IceDogs. So yeah. I'm excited for Sam Dickinson and see what he can bring to the table.
Very excited. And now we've got on the Thrive Fantasy Hotline our second guest of the day, the one and only host of the OHL and 60 podcast and contributor for the Hamilton Bulldogs audio network. Boo. But we're joined by the one and only Colin Ward. Colin, thanks a lot for joining us today, sir.
Hey, what are you boys doing surfing Mississauga? That rinks unreal. I love going to Mississauga.
Who?
I just want to quickly crack the
well, we had their one fan come in on the chat and say go Mississauga. So.
Hey, Mississauga had a heck of a year. James Richmond, coach of the year.
Yeah.
Hey, pack that barn.
I'm sure the 50 fans are loving that.
Big one tonight. Hey, big one there. Big one
did they pay off the Raptors 905 crowd to stay behind?
Hey, you know what? I honestly, it's a great spot to go. It's just in a terrible location.
Oh, the location. I went there for the first time.
Oh, you gotta get Kyle going on this.
So it's gonna be short. I'm gonna keep it short. But when Brandon and me went there for the first time, when we first drove out there, I'm like, "There's an arena out here," and because we passed by like blocks and blocks of factory buildings, I'm like, "How do they get fans out here?"
Yeah, it's tough, eh? And like, there's not an exit like that goes onto the arena. Like, majority of the times when you build an arena off a highway like that, you want an exit that goes within, like, right there by the arena. But you kind of got to drive a bit to get, like, coming from Hamilton, like, you kind of have to drive a bit to the arena.
Well,
I guess for us,
I'm going to
but,
give them one benefit, is that they actually have free fan parking in a parking lot.
Yeah, you know what? There's a few places that are really nice. Kitchener's nice to go to. Sarnia, they take about, I know Sarnia, it's like $2 off ticket to
Wow.
go for parking. I think it's like $22. Usually, like, well, that's pre-COVID, but like, it used to be like 22, and that extra $2 instead of it being 20 goes to the parking, which is kind of ideal, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't be surprised if like Mississauga does that. I know Kitchener kind of does that too. So that could be the part of the free parking. This comes off your ticket, but it's nice that teams do that, because charging like London $20 a parking spot is bizarre.
I mean, I can't
Like-
complain. Like, we do, like, we have that same one, that little tiny parking lot that the IceDogs have
Yeah.
right next to the arena is like $15.
Yeah, like, come on. That's the problem with the playoff pricing. That's why the attendance, I think, is so down here with the so far in the playoffs. I mean, props to Mississauga. They had 2,000 to one game. That was one of their best crowds all season. So props to them for that, because majority of the playoffs have been like, yeah, that cricket soundtrack still VCAP, because I tell you, it's been down. It's been down, and I don't know what the deal is, but I think a little bit to do with COVID. I mean, last week there was really nice weather on Sunday. I mean, oh my, like, that was like golf weather. I mean, it was like the hot heat too, like the breeze.
Yeah.
It was hot, so
Yeah.
it was like a July day. So maybe that's why it was so low around the league. But yeah, I expect it to be better tonight here as we head to some elimination games.
So, Colin, before we get into it here, just let everyone know here where they can follow you and where they can find all the OHL stuff that you guys do.
Yeah, so you can follow our show at the OHL and 60 podcast on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And you can follow me personally at Colin Ward _O. So that's, you can find me personally on Twitter. And you can find the show on at the OHL and 60 podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can listen to our podcast on any platform network.
Perfect. And your co-host, the one and only Reese Dumaney, but unfortunately, he's cranky sometimes, so we'll just leave it at that. But no, you guys do a great job with your OHL coverage. You guys are obviously in with the Hamilton Bulldogs audio network now, doing some stuff with them, so you can check that.
Yeah, big playoff win.
Yeah, and Hamilton's obviously going to be making a deep run, but we're going to go ahead and bypass that. So, Colin, based off of what you've seen so far, specifically for the IceDogs here, because this is a Dog Pound podcast, what have you thought of, obviously, Sam Dickinson being picked at 4? I know you were very high on him, as well as I was, as the top defenseman in this draft, going number 4. And then also the second-round pick that the IceDogs had from the North York Rangers and Kevin He. Just thoughts on those two players.
So you know what I'm loving about this? And I love their pick today with Andrew Vermeulen, because you basically replace all your OAs or leading goal scorer that you're going to lose next year. I love Niagara's draft, and I'm glad I can come on here and talk about Niagara, because on the show we only got a condensed time to talk about each team, right? Because we have to cover each team. But here I'm glad I get to come on and talk about Niagara, because, oh my, what a draft they had. I mean, Sam Dickinson, that's a guy that you're looking at putting him by Christmas time into that Dakota Betts role. I mean, you need to replace him for Betts, right? I mean, he logged so many minutes for them last year, and he was so crucial for that team. I mean, yeah, they finished where they finished, but could you imagine what it would have been like without Dakota Betts? I mean, he was just a star for them, I thought. A future guy that's going to get very good offensively. That's Dickinson. I mean, Dickinson can jump up in the rush like nothing. I mean, he can create a play. He picked his timing right, which is crucial for a young defenseman. I mean, a lot of times defensemen, right, they get caught up the ice. They try to do too much early. Dickinson's he's in that level where he can just pick where he wants to go wisely. I love his game. I'm glad they took him. He's my favorite player in the draft. And Kevin He, you're talking about a 40-plus goal scorer in about 3 years in the Ontario Hockey League. I mean, this kid can score goals. That shot, guys, it explodes off his stick. You talked about Daniil Gushin, right? How Gushin can score like at will. We know that. Kevin He, 3 years from now, look out. He could be in that category. So 2 really good picks. And Vermeulen today, Vermeulen to start things off today was a very good pick, because usually your first 3 16-year-olds in the draft, like your first 3-round picks, are going to play. So I would imagine these 3 have a good shot at being at their roster. I mean, for sure, he and Dickinson and Vermeulen as well would probably be the 3. Vermeulen, 32 points in 22 games, guys. In the playoffs, 11-6. You're getting a guy that can score as well. You're looking at a Van Loon. He's 6'1", 187. So you imagine, and this is the thing that I love talking to scouts about, because you talk to scouts and you marvel about these kids, right? Like Dickinson, he's 6'2". I mean, Vermeulen, he's 6'1", 187. You imagine when these kids are 18 years old, and they're in after getting drafted in the NHL, because as you know, when kids go to NHL development camp, they come back like a different person. I mean, now you're a pro, right? Sometimes your first 2 years, you see it in the Ontario Hockey League where it's like, okay, you can kind of see the maturity, right? Like you can kind of like, when are they going to blossom into what you drafted them as? Then they turn 18, they go to their NHL camps, they come back from development camp, and next thing you know, they're a different person, right? And it was funny because I like to compare guys. We had Josh Bloom, Buffalo Sabre draft pick, on the show, and I like to talk about Josh Bloom. I like to make that reference because Josh Bloom was that guy, right, that no one really knew about, and all of a sudden the Sabres take him in the 3rd round. He comes back and he's got like 4 straight shorthanded goals, and it's like, oh, look at this kid, right? Like now we know who this kid is. But that's one that I like to pick, where he goes to development camp, right? He's around pros, and I honestly thought Josh Bloom's learning experience from going to Buffalo's camp this year was perfect, right? Because they had the Jack Eichel thing going on, and how are you not going to mature in the right way going through all that situation, right, in your first development camp? And I mean, they also had some really talent there with Owen Power. So that's who I like to compare guys to in the draft here. But Vermeulen, very good player. I like that 4th-round pick for that. Very nice pickup for the Niagara IceDogs, that's for sure. Really good draft so far. We'll see what happens here down the stretch.
And you mentioned all 3 of those guys having a shot to make the team with so many second-year players because of the double cohort. Do you think that's going to be a little bit more difficult for these rookies than usual to come in and actually earn a spot, just because there's going to be so many second-year players on this team that there might not be a lot of spots for these rookies?
Yeah, for sure. And where the Niagara IceDogs are, right, they're in a rebuild. They're in you would hope the back 9 of a rebuild. You would hope this is the last draft, right, of the rebuild. And next year you start to get into that playoff spot. That's probably the ultimate goal for the Niagara IceDogs franchise, right, make the playoffs next year. So you get 3 16-year-old cards. I expect them to use the 3 16-year-old cards. Usually each team does. Dickinson, he, and Vermeulen would probably be my 3 as of now. Obviously, we don't know who their 6th-round pick is if they made that trade with Windsor. So we don't know who that pick is. They get a little bit of a break, but I'm guessing that's their 3 right now that they're sold on, because why else would you trade back, right? You get it. If you had a guy you liked in the 5th round, you'd likely trade up or stay where you are to get that guy, right? But them trading back makes me guess that, yeah, they're sold on these guys for sure. Then the rest can come in at camp, and let's see what they got.
Kyle, do you have any questions for Colin?
He basically nailed it on the head, and from what you said, basically the IceDogs have replaced 3 players that won't be back next year in Dakota Betts, Van Loon, and Daniil Gushin with those 3 picks in Dickinson, he, and now we know how it's. I hope we know how it's pronounced, because I'm probably the worst person with freaking names.
Dickinson, Kevin He, and Andrew Vermeulen.
Okay, so I did get that right. Wow.
Yeah, you got it.
God,
boy.
For once.
And out.
For one, if I had a clapping sound effect, I would give it to Kyle for pronouncing a name right. But Colin, you look at a couple of the IceDogs prospects as well. Like Giacomino Martino was impressive at training camp or last year, and even Cole Bishop, who they signed, who plays hockey in Tennessee. Like they've got some prospects next year that could try to make that jump, but you would assume that they'd be going after another player in the offseason, for maybe another overager from another team, if they decide to move on from one of their guys that ends up being an overager. But a lot of options for the IceDogs this offseason.
IceDogs last 2-3 seasons, they've had to use that 3rd goalie. So we'll see what happens here. But I think that maybe a 3rd goaltender depends, but they have a lot in their system. I think they got to add some D, because from watching them from afar last year, I wasn't able to go much after February, but from afar, it looks like your defense, right? You need defense. So it wouldn't be bad adding a veteran D, play with Dickinson on that pairing, right? A lot like what Guelph did. I like the Guelph ad. If you're Niagara right now, you look at that Guelph model, right? You go out and get Saprika from Sarnia, and people are like, Cam Saprika, who? But that's a sexy pick now when you look at it. That's a sexy trade because Cam Allen comes in, their rookie, their star rookie, such a good hockey player he is. And it would make perfect sense to me if the Niagara IceDogs to go add that OA defenseman to go play with Sam Dickinson, that stay-at-home defenseman. And it's too bad Dakota Betts isn't a year older or a year younger because that would be a nice duo there. But Sam Dickinson, it would be nice to add him a veteran D partner for sure. But there's going to be guys there, right? You got Landon Cato already. You have Isaac Enright, who, I mean, it feels like yesterday he came into the league and now 19 years old. That's crazy. But it goes by fast. But it would be nice to add that. And then also a forward. Add one of each. It's nice if you can add depth. Depth is huge, in my opinion, now to win because you get injuries, right? In the OHL, you get suspensions. You get every issue you can have. It's nice to have depth. If you have depth, you can slot a guy in on the third line to start the year. And then by the time Christmas time comes, he's playing on the first line, right? Panofemis, we saw him do that. And it would be nice if they could have a guy that comes up, play on the third line. You can slide him in that, be that Swiss Army knife, be a chameleon. You can blend in anywhere. So we'll see what happens there. But I think all three positions would be nice because I think this year is a year where the Niagara IceDogs are in a transition, right? And it would be nice if they could step up. They had a really good last 10 games of the season. Last 20 games, they were really good. So hopefully they can step up from that, continue to build, take positive strides forward, and let's see what happens here. But if you can add one of three positions, I'd be happy with that too.
Colin, what do you think before we let you go of the fact that the OHL draft is being taken place in the middle of the playoffs? And again, it doesn't matter for Niagara, they're out of it. But I look at teams like Hamilton. I know they don't have a lot of draft picks, but even any other playoff team who, has a decent amount of picks, and they're having to kind of, especially if you have a coach and GM tandem, that's the same person. You have two jobs. You're the GM and the coach, and you have that dual title, I guess you'd say, not tandem, the dual title. How difficult do you think that is for these guys to have to, leave practice or leave a meeting? You're trying to go farther into the OHL playoffs here, game plan for your opponents, and you're having to kind of draft on the spot as well. How difficult do you think that is in the middle of the season? Well, in the playoffs even, which is at the height of the season right now, to have to leave and do your draft. Do you think that that's really fair? And do you kind of think that they should move it till after the season?
I like where it is because I like the tradition of having your draft picks come to a playoff game. I have an interesting story. So I was in London, and Dalton Duhart, who's now an OA already, just wrapped up his Ontario Hockey League career with the Saginaw Spirit. I was at a game, and he sat right next to me, and it was an Erie London playoff game. I believe it was game 6. And London was down 3-1 in the third period, came back and won 4-3. And the look on his face when we got 9,000 yelling and screaming, the look on his face is like, oh my, right? Like, I'm going to be over the glass next year. That's the crazy thing. So I like seeing the kids' faces going through that playoff experience. They kind of get a gist of what it's going to be because everyone knows, playoffs, but until you're actually there, it's a big difference. I mean, Meridian Center, look how crazy that gets your playoffs, right? So it's nice when the kids get to go to the venues, see the guys that are going to be teammates next year. I like that, going through that day in the OHL already, especially in the playoffs. So I like it. And as for the coaches, I mean, they're a weird breed, man. It's like last year I was in Brantford this year I was in Brantford, a Sunday afternoon game. Mike McKenzie was there. And I'm thinking, like, how do you do it? Like, you're in Erie last night. Today you're in Brantford. Brantford's not a far drive from Kitchener, but it's tough. And honestly, that's why you give a lot of credit to your scouting staff, right? That's your scouting staff's job. Your head scout is so important, right? And the coaches, they can only go when the schedule's free, and then they're there. They are there whenever they're not playing during the week. And that's a nice part of minor midget games, right? When you play during the week, OHL GMs and / coaches can actually go to games. So that's nice there that you get the opportunity to get out. But yeah, you just put a lot of credit to your scouting staff, right? And it sounds cliche, right? Every GM coach that says, "Oh, our scouting staff," but it's true, right? They're the ones that are doing all the travel. They're in different districts all year long. It's a tough job. It really is. So props to the scouting staffs of this OHL, because I always chirp the NHL about this, but it's kind of right. The OHL is where guys start their NHL careers, right? It's where you get on the board, on the radar. The OHL scouts are the ones that find the future pros. So they're the ones with the better eye, in my opinion, right now, because they're finding future pros. They kind of turn into what guys are. So Niagara's one that found Panophemus, right? So that's what I like to say.
Kyle, any final thoughts for Colin?
He's pretty much nailed it all on the head, like always.
Thanks, boys.
Colin,
have a good one.
Before you take off, what is who's been your favorite pick of the draft so far?
Ooh, hey, thank you for that, because honestly, it's not just because I had the first pick. I really like the Saginaw Spirit draft. Zane Parkey, very good pick in the first round, their second first-round pick, compensation pick. I saw Josh Glavin play a lot for the Lansing Junior Sting out in Sarnia. What a player. You're talking 6'2", 180. When there's a prototypical, right? When they're 18, what are they going to be? You're looking at 6'4", 200. That's a defenseman, right? I mean, your prototypical dream defenseman weight size for your National Hockey League team, what is it, 6'2" to 6'4", 200 pounds?
Yeah.
That's nice to have. So he's going to fill out to that body type, right? He's going to be a big defenseman out from Sarnia playing for Saginaw. Very nice pick. And also Bodie Stewart from Mississauga Senators. I mean, that's a franchise, but that's a minor midget program where they were down in the dumps, and now you look at it, and it's like every year they got a guy from Mississauga. That's just a testament to how good the GTHL is. I mean, you look at the first round, right, and you see all the picks, GTHL. I mean, yeah, OHL teams are scouts didn't have to leave Toronto, but it's just a testament to how good it is. It's all skilled, right? Like, it's skill, and it's crazy. Like, you watch the playoff game so far, and I don't think I've ever saw a playoff pace so fast. Like, I was in Kitchener last Sunday, and I had a headache after the first period. I talk a lot, but I didn't say one word. So it just shows how fast it is and how much is going on, how skilled it is. So it's honestly such a good spot. I'm not just saying it because I cover the league, but it's such a nice spot that the league's in here with the pace of play and with the skill. I know there's some questions with with some suspensions and stuff, but hopefully that gets figured out in the off season. But it's been really good. It's a high skilled sport now, right? And I enjoy it. It's fun going out. It doesn't matter what game you're going to watch, and you know you're going to see some high skill, right? You know you're going to see a competitive game. It's nice now in the league. There's a lot more parity, and there's going to be a lot more parity because the teams that did not make the playoffs all had good drafts. And Niagara fans, media, you guys got to be excited about this one because so far your first three picks have been really good. I'm glad you guys got Dickinson. He was my pick all along going to Niagara. Once I saw him at the OHL Cup, I was like, this kid is a star. And by the way, Panophemus' brother to the Kingston Frontenacs, I picked 99. So you guys are going to be playing him a lot. Now you guys are going to have a brother matchup.
Yeah.
Add that in.
Kingston likes those brothers. They took Jordan Frasca's brother yesterday. So
they do.
Yep. So Colin Ward.
Battle of brothers.
Colin Ward from the OHL and 60 podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today, man. And I'm sure we'll talk very soon. And enjoy your off season of golf. And hopefully Hamilton gives you something to cheer about this playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. It's been fun. Hopefully the Bulldogs keep it going here. I know you guys don't like that, Niagara. Me saying hopefully the Bulldogs keep it going. Sorry, fans.
Hey, I'll take the Bulldogs over the Knights. So I'm glad you kind of switched over to that.
Well, here's the thing. See, I grew up around the London Knights, so it's kind of tough, right, to just avoid it. But
yeah,
I cover the league. Hey, believe it or not, I took Kitchener in the first round in 6 games. So
wow,
London Knights.
That hurt to say. And
I don't think London's very good this year.
Van Loon said the same thing. You when you bleed that London green, it's hard to get away from it. So
Exactly.
Colin Ward from the OHL and 60 podcast. Find him on all audio platforms, wherever you get your podcasts at, and follow him on Twitter at Colin Ward and at the OHL and 60 podcast. Colin, thanks a lot again, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Have a good day.
See you, man.
Thanks. See ya.
Yeah.
There's Colin Ward. Does great draft coverage for the Ontario Hockey League along with his co-host Reese Dumaney. If you guys want to go check them out, they talk about all the other teams that we do not talk about, and we do not want to talk about the London Knights. So if you want to go listen to them talk about the London Knights, have at it.
So I know I'm not good at it, but I think one time we need to have a 0-60 podcast versus Dog Pound podcast golf game.
So you mean I'm going to be carrying the team?
Well, how do you know? I could be like diamond in the rough, and I could show up and just be like Tiger Woods on Sunday.
Well, we could get Matt Sanderson as a ringer to come in because he's really good at golf.
I want to golf too.
You're the caddy.
I could be a good. You don't know. I could be a great golf player.
Oh, maybe if we did a scramble where like we would both shoot him, take the best shot, Paul. Maybe you could get
not for any like a cup or anything. Maybe just like winner buys food after.
Yeah, well, we'll challenge them to a round this year. I'll take on the challenge. I'll take it on. But,
I do want to throw in there Windsor's pick from Niagara. They chose a goalie, Carter Froggett, from the Elgin Middlesex Chiefs.
There you go. There's another team that I saw a lot of last year too. The Elgin Middlesex. That was another team, along with the Detroit Honey Baked.
And it's funny. He talked about Sagan's draft and drafting big players. With the pick, like as he's talking, they draft Tyler McGuire, and Colin's in our YouTube chat. Right D-man, 6'2", $181.
There you go.
He says I'll get Corey Connors as our ringer. Anyways, we're getting closer and closer to the Niagara's pick. It's only about almost 9 picks away now from their 6th round pick. It would be interesting to see who they take with that pick.
Yeah, I'm looking at pick 111 to Oshawa. Caden Hines from Florida Alliance.
That's a team name, the Florida Alliance?
Yeah. Apparently a lot of those teams in the States are sponsored by like companies. That's why like Honey Baked is a sponsor and all that stuff. And a lot of places in Michigan sponsor teams like that. But it's good to see players like coming out of Florida. You know what I mean? Like it's good to see that we're the OHL starting to recruit in places like the United States and some absurd places.
I just seen out in Youth USA with a pick 104, the Shattuck St. Mary's Sabres.
But again, it's just nice to see that they're starting to recruit some hockey players from all over North America, and even Cole Bishop from that was signed by the Niagara IceDogs, picked last year. He's from Tennessee, so I mean,
that's right.
It's nice to see these young players start to come up into the Ontario Hockey League. I know the USHL is also a big league too that the OHL has to keep an eye on because they're obviously being able to recruit some good players. Obviously, Adam Fantilli, they just Daniil Gushin played there in the year that he was off, and they just obviously got I'm drawing a blank on his name, the kid that was supposed to go in the top 5 from the Toronto Junior Canadians, Michael Hodge or Haig
Hodge. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm thinking of like Merrill Hodge for some reason.
I'm supposed to be the one getting the names wrong here.
Oh, because I'm watching football coverage and then Merrill Hodge is on, so like I'm mixed up with it's hard when the NFL draft is also here with the OHL draft.
Has it always been 3 days, the draft for the NFL? I don't remember it being that long.
You must clearly not watch the NFL then, because
I clearly don't.
Round 1 is Thursday, round 2 and 3 are Friday, and then 4 to 7 are on.
Just because I'm so fixated on the NHL draft that I always think it's just 2 days.
Oh, what about when we went to the NHL draft in Buffalo? How about that?
Speaking of Buffalo, very off topic, but like staying on the topic of hockey, our boy Malcolm Subban sings the national anthem last night.
Yeah, it was awesome. He sang the American anthem. He's getting his paycheck.
He was all right. Like, I'm not saying he was like that should be the anthem singer from now on, but like it was awesome to see both teams like give him like a crazy like standing O.
Well, he played for the Blackhawks too, so
yeah.
Both teams. It's nice to see that he's doing something.
But like they're paying the players, and everyone's supposed to be like serious during a national anthem. Everyone's laughing. There's not one person that wasn't taking it serious. They're all laughing.
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
It was awesome. I will say that it was good for Malcolm Subban. Colin chimed in. The Florida Alliance is like a select team. They'll play tourneys all over Michigan, Ohio, Boston, Pittsburgh, Chicago. So apparently they're a ringer team from Florida. There's that. We've got our next guest coming on in about 4 minutes here. Niagara is getting close to being on the clock here. We're at pick 114 at Erie. Niagara's up at 121. This is a pick they acquired from North Bay. In a pick swap. These picks get moved around. Who knows where they came from?
It doesn't tell me on the
it could be
either.
Via 3 teams. You know what I mean? Like, it'd just be all over the place. But we got Austin Broad coming on the call very shortly. Advanced stats for the Charging Buffalo, also the 40.
Austin.
And also from FC Hockey, their lead prospect guy for hockey there. So
I do want to touch base before he gets on. What Colin said about like Kevin, he got me really excited. Like I read the scouting report on him, but we're taking Colin's word for it here that like this man has an incredible shot. And when he said that, I'm reading this scouting report, and clearly it talks about his speed being a big thing for him. He has apparently he's one of the top fastest players in his age group. One of the fastest skaters going into the draft. But the other one was firecracker release on the snapshot, and he hits one-timers hard. So he's got the speed and the shot. So basically, Kevin he is like maybe like a hybrid player between Van Loon and Daniil Gushin with the shot and the speed. So I think I'm getting very excited for Kevin he already, man. He hasn't even put a jersey on yet.
Well, let's not let let's not drink the Kool-Aid too much. But yeah, I mean, everything that we've seen from Kevin Heath so far as these scouting reports go, it looks like he's going to be the real deal and a guy that Niagara should be lucky to have.
Well, this is hilarious. The guy who did the OHL Central scouting report says player comparison, Daniil Gushin.
Wow.
I know we can't take those seriously because you look like the NHL picks that they do in the first round, like player comparison, like Mario Lemieux, and you're like, oh, yeah, let's go.
I love those player comparisons. Niagara's up in 4 picks.
Yeah, every defenseman is Victor Hedman.
Wouldn't that be nice, though?
Yeah. We just drafted a plethora of Victor Hedmans in the league, I guess.
Yeah. When we get Austin on the call, Kyle, just interrupt us when Niagara picks, okay?
Okay, I will interrupt you guys.
You'll be the pick interrupter.
Like, hey,
yeah,
quiet.
Or tell me to play the draft thing, and so you can announce the pick.
I haven't talked to Austin in a while.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll him and I got to get our little jab in about the Sabres taking care of the Leafs this year. That's always.
I
fun.
don't think that's necessary. That's it's an OHL. This is an OHL podcast.
Oh, there are OHL players on these teams.
I guess so.
And coming through now is
here we go. The robot. He's back.
We need to name this guy.
I'm back. The OHL draft. Day 2.
All right. So as we transfer the call here to the one and only Austin Broad, to wait for him to join.
The one and only.
Niagara is, I feel like I've said that for everybody so far. I got to come up with a new slogan. The Sioux's up at 118. Niagara's up at 121. So Kyle will let us know when Niagara does pick. But we're joined now on the Thrive Fantasy Hotline by FC Hockey and the Charging Buffaloes, Austin Broad. Austin, my friend, my brother, my Sabres, I guess, lover, fellow Sabres lover. And great to have you on the show today, man.
Good. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here talking the OHL draft. It's interesting. It's not something you and I have ever been able to discuss together, so it's a first for us.
And something that we discuss all the time, Austin, before we get going.
No.
How about the Sabres against the Leafs this year for our good buddy Kyle over here, whose beloved Leafs are about to lose in the first round of the Tampa Bay Lightning? But just talk about the Sabres this year against the Leafs. It's been a pretty good year.
Well, I would slow down on that because I hate to burst your bubble and probably pump Kyle's tires, but I actually like Toronto against Tampa Bay in the first round this year.
Pump them up, buddy.
It has. They match up well. It's a nice run and gun thing that Toronto probably plays well into their thing. But unfortunately, against a real juggernaut like the Buffalo Sabres, Toronto struggled this year, which always warms our hearts because, let's face it, the last 11 years, that's pretty much all we've had to look forward to.
Austin, I have no excuses. You guys beat us. Plain and simple. I got no excuses this year. You beat us.
So Austin, I couldn't do justice as far as the intro for all the stuff, the great work that you are doing everywhere right now. But other than where can they find you? Find your work, find you on Twitter, and just general thoughts on, or general kind of, just give us what you do. Tell us what you do, because you do so many different things around the game of hockey.
Yeah, so I do prospects coverage for the Charging Buffalo. That's NHL Draft and the Buffalo Sabres prospects. So, being in Niagara, if you are a Sabres fan and you want to know what's going on with their farm system, you can find my work there. NHL Draft stuff, I am the head of USA Scouting for SC Hockey. I actually have the USA Czechia semifinal on the TV right now as I talk to you guys, because I got to give in some views there. So just doing a little multitasking. And you can find myself on Twitter at Austin _Broad, and that's pretty much where I post everything. It's a lot of NHL Draft and a lot of Sabre stuff. So if you're not really interested in that stuff, don't look me up, because I'll be pretty boring.
And there's been a lot of Jack Eichel stuff as of late, which I've been loving.
Oh yeah, well we have their first round pick, and I'm a big into sports betting, so just had to be petty and throw some money on Eichel to show up last night because the season's over. And lo and behold, he shows up and gets 3 points. So
I saw a tweet. It was like the Wayne Gretzky when games don't matter, and it showed a picture of Jack Eichel. So, oh man.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, go follow Austin and go check out all of his great work. Lucky to have a guy like him around to talk about prospects. And before we get into the draft itself, I know Niagara's on the clock, Kyle, so interrupt us when Niagara does make the pick. But just thoughts on Michael Haig, I think it was, or Hodge. I keep saying Merrill Hodge. Well, I keep getting Merrill Hodge stuck in my head for some reason. I got to get this guy out of here. But what were your thoughts on him going to the USHL, and instead of going and committing to the Ontario Hockey League, which was huge, because as a Toronto Junior Canadian, you think that it would be a slam dunk for him to start in the OHL. But just thoughts on him going to the USHL, and thoughts on that league in general. Kind of, you think that they're going to be a threat for the Ontario Hockey League as a league where guys are going to go to try to increase their draft stock as they try to transition to either the NHL or to playing in the NCAA?
Yeah, so, him signing a tender with the Chicago Steel actually was a bit surprising to me, because I know Fantilli was probably going to be the first overall pick in his OHL draft, but that was already kind of, everyone knew he was going to the Chicago Steel. Everyone knew he was following his brother. Everyone knew he was, going to the NCAA. With a guy like Haig, I think he came as a bit of a surprise, because you and I actually talked the other day. I said, if he's there at 4, I hope the IceDogs take him. And then lo and behold, a day later, he signed a tender with the Chicago Steel. He went 9th overall to Kitchener. So, maybe they can convince him to decommit from the Steel. But with the Chicago Steel, they're one of the best junior programs in all of North America, no matter what league you're in. Ryan Hardy had a juggernaut there before he left for the NHL. They've continued to build a really solid program there. And now you're seeing with the USHL, the USHL used to just be a path to the NCAA. So if you were playing in the OJHL, you would go to the USHL and then try and get a scholarship. But now the last couple of years, lo and behold, we're seeing guys get drafted to the NHL straight from the USHL. So it's no longer a pathway to the NCAA. It's become a legitimate pathway to the NHL. And I think, you're looking at a guy like, I know Power was drafted directly from the NCAA, not from the USHL, but he goes from the OJHL to the USHL, plays with the Chicago Steel, plays 2 solid years there, goes to the NCAA, becomes the first overall pick. A guy like Matthew Coronado, same thing. He's in Harvard there. There's a bunch of guys from, the States and Canada that are going to this league, and they're not using it as a stepping stone to school. They're using it as a stepping stone to professional hockey, and we're starting to see a lot of these players succeed at the NHL. It's become a solid developmental league, and I'd say it's more of a threat for the OHL than it is the CHL as a whole, because it might not have the allure to the guys in the Quebec region or out west, because out west the AJHL is kind of, and the BCHL are kind of the same thing that the USHL is becoming. So the OJHL isn't as good of a league as the USHL, so it's become a little bit of a secondary option. But because it's building so much momentum, it could, if the OHL doesn't figure it out, because we know they've had their own issues over the last couple of years, the USHL could pose a legitimate threat to poach some top-tier talent, and they're already doing it.
Yeah, I was going to say. So the pick is in for the IceDogs, and I don't know I don't know if this is a typo or what, but there's a random like bracket in there.
Maybe that's what he goes by, Kyle.
But there's no closed bracket, so this is where I'm confused. So Anyways, the IceDogs chose a left winger out of the Markham Major under-16 team. Here we go. I'm going to attempt this. I don't know if Milo is the first name or Tien is the first name, but I'm going to go Milo Tien Boyu. So
I think it's Boyo, a.k.a. Milo Tien. I think that's how it's going there with how they kind of...
So he's got one name?
No, I mean...
It's Boyo, a.k.a. this guy.
Yeah, and then his last name's Tien.
Okay.
So he's Boyo, and then the preferred name, I guess, is Milo, but they didn't close the bracket.
Okay, so
good job on the
Boyu
Ontario Hockey
Tien.
League website. But, yeah, sorry, Austin. Didn't mean to cut you off there. But I do agree.
No, that's what we're here for.
Exactly. So, again, going off what you said about the league, just again, you see somebody like Adam Fantilli who decided to end up going to the USHL. You look at a guy, I know Kyle was high on this guy a couple years ago. I was hoping the IceDogs would take him, but I don't think he would have reported to the OHL. And a guy that you're looking at from the US program is Frank Nazar. Just your thoughts on how he's playing kind of right now over in that tournament, and why these guys are trying to kind of not deciding to go to the Ontario Hockey League as their first option. Just, I guess, is the Ontario Hockey League, I know they like to say the slogan of, like, the stars of tomorrow and the best developmental hockey league in North America, but do you think that the USHL and these other leagues are starting to catch up to them in that regard, or do you still think that they're gonna be able to recruit some of these top guys from Toronto?
No, I think the CHL and the OHL, for that matter, is still probably their top option. But now it's not the only option to become a National Hockey League draft pick, which I think is what's most appealing to these kids. Like a guy like Frank Nazar, I mean, Americans, it's a little different, right? When you get to go play for the USNTDP in Plymouth there, that National Development Team program is awesome. That's probably the cream of the crop for an American who's under the age of 18, because, you're playing against NCAA schools, you're playing against the USHL, you're going to the World Juniors. That is, if you're on that team, you're at the World U18s. So, like, that is a little bit different. But for Canadians, it's becoming a pretty solid option because it's another path to the NHL. And if, you're not happy with the OHL team that drafts you, or if you just have other aspirations, like maybe you want to get a scholarship to go to school and, also set forth an NCAA scholarship rather than going to school in Canada and having to play U Sports if your career becomes nothing. Like, it's another pathway that gives these kids an options that to the NHL, but also after hockey. Because let's face it, if you're an OHL draft pick, there's not a 100% chance you're going to the NHL. You got to start worrying about life after hockey, and the USHL leading to the NCAA is another pathway that could be appealing to these kids, and rightfully so.
And going off of again, I know you're a big prospects guy, and other than Sam Dickinson, because we had been discussing that he was probably the best choice when Haig decided to go to the USHL for the IceDogs. But did the top five kind of fall the way that you thought it would, with Misa going first to Saginaw, or was there anything that kind of surprised you with the top five, or was that kind of just how you would have kind of went as well with your thoughts on those guys?
I mean, it probably shouldn't have surprised me, but I thought there could have been a slight chance that Noah Spence would have been the pick to Saginaw. But when there is an exceptional player, you get that extra year, development, you get that excitement of drafting an exceptional player. I think everything kind of fell the way that it did. I think Misa is going to do really well in Saginaw. I know they struggled a lot this year, but they do have some exciting players, veterans to help insulate him as he kind of adjusts to playing in the OHL. He was awesome at the OHL Cup, and that's kind of probably what cemented his exceptional status. So he's going to be a really good player. So I think, if anything, I wasn't 100% sold on him being the first guy. I thought Spence had a legitimate shot at going there, but other than that, no, I kind of fell the way that you thought it did.
Yeah, a lot of Toronto Junior Canadians. Obviously, the top two picks were Mississauga Senators. But is there anybody that you've liked so far that's been your favorite pick of the draft?
The draft in general, or for Niagara?
No, just in general. I mean, Niagara's had a couple of picks here, but just in general, maybe give us your favorite pick overall and your favorite pick from the IceDogs. Why not?
All right, so, I mean, aside from Dickinson for the IceDogs, because let's face it, the fourth overall pick is probably the best one. I really like their third-round pick. I think Andrew Vermeulen from Niagara North, a local kid, he's got a lot of offensive skill. He's got some size. I think he's going to bring a lot to that team. And it's kind of cliche, but Noah Spence was my favorite pick of the draft. I mean, I thought he was the best player available in this draft, and Erie got a really good one there. He's a pretty big building block for them going forward. And, we see a lot of Erie with the work that you and I do with IceDogs Extra and, doing the OHL tonight and things like that. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see how he develops. But I think Erie probably got the best player in the draft at second overall.
Right on cue. I was literally about to say. The IceDogs take their 7th round pick, so pick 127, a left defenseman from the North York Rangers, Oscar Wu.
There you go.
Woo, Kenny Wu.
North York Rangers with another selection there for Niagara. But yeah, Austin, I mean, again, like, it's hard to project what these guys are going to be, right? Especially when you get to these later rounds, and some of this is a crapshoot at this point. But for somebody who does scouting and looks in depthly into that type of stuff, just if you're kind of a general manager looking at these late round picks, just what type of player, what are you kind of looking at if you're going to be drafting a guy with one of these later round picks? Is there really anything tangible that you can go off of? Because it's such a crapshoot with these kids once you get to, I mean, there's 15 rounds. So, I mean, there's so many of these players you just don't know a lot about as far as the scouting goes. So what are you looking at if you're kind of trying to draft these players later on? Is there really anything that you're trying to kind of hold on to and say, like, this would be something that if this guy ends up being an OHL player down the road, you'd be kind of ecstatic about?
Yeah, so I think for intangible, obviously you got to look at the hockey IQ, how they understand the game, how they read the game, if their brain can kind of keep up and how they process things. But for a tangible asset, I mean, it's for OHL hockey in particular, you have to look at the skating ability. If a player can't skate and can't keep up with the OHL, they're not going to be able to succeed at all in the OHL. Like, they could be a good junior B player if they have all the skill and can't skate, but if you can't skate, you're not going to be able to keep up with some of the best junior players in the world. So for tangibility, especially later rounds, I look at guys that can skate, whether it be, their speed or their agility. But if they have solid skating ability, the mental aspect of the game will come. But if they can keep up with the game, there's hope for them, especially if you have the right, coaching in place and you develop players properly. The rest of it will come. But as long as they can keep up with the pace of play, there's always a shot. So I'd be looking for guys that have strong skating ability, and secondary to that, just make sure you have guys that kind of understand where they need to be and when they need to be there.
Yeah, you can't really teach speed, especially in hockey or even in football too. I mean, you can teach guys how to catch, you can teach them, route running and things like that. But if they some people are just born with the natural great speed, obviously not people like us, but some people are just born with that, and you can try to hope that you can teach them kind of the fundamentals of the game of hockey or football or whatever sport it is. So I like that, the fact that if they have the speed and they're able to keep up, that's already, a good check mark and a good stepping stone for them. The hockey IQ is obviously very important too, but that's stuff that, as a coach as well, Austin, that's something that you'd hope that they would be able to kind of, take over and try to build these young kids into young men as they transition into the OHL and even after OHL hockey and just in life in general.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, you don't need the most skilled players because, I mean, obviously it helps to be super skilled, but you don't have to be super skilled to succeed in the OHL. You can be a hardworking player who outworks his opponents, but as long as you can keep up with the pace of play, there's always a shot for you. And I think that's, especially in the later rounds, that's what I'm looking for. Obviously, at the top of the draft, you want to take the guys that are the best at pretty much everything, and that's what you get when you draft a guy, first, second, third, fourth overall. But in the later rounds, look for that speed and look for just some glimmers of hope there, and the rest will, if you have the right developmental staff in place, the rest will, fall into play for you.
Any final thoughts for Austin there, Kyle?
I want to get your analysis on like the first two IceDog picks, because we mentioned it earlier that you got a guy like Dakota Betts leaving and a guy like Daniil Gushin leaving. Do you think that these two players that they chose in Sam Dickinson and Kevin He will be nice replacements? Maybe not right away, but at least, I mean, the IceDogs taking the best defenseman available at number 4, and in Kevin He, his prospect profile showing that he's an incredible speedster and his shot is a big benefactor with his game. What are your takes on both of these?
So I think Dickinson was, Brandon and I talked about it. He was probably the best choice. I mean, he has the offensive ability. He has the good skating ability. But the thing I like about that is he also couples that with an OHL-ready frame. He's a big player, so he's not going to be intimidated by the size of the players that he'll be playing against. He's not going to be intimidated by the speed of the play because he can keep up with that. I think he's a really good replacement. He'll be, he'll probably, everyone needs an adjustment period, but he'll be able to adjust pretty quickly, and he'll be a really nice addition to that defense group that I kind of thought was going to be a positive last year, but really, let's face it, it wasn't.
Yeah.
And in terms of their Kevin He, and I think him and Vermeulen, I'll put them together. I think both of those guys are going to be good replacements for some of the players they're losing on forward. They're both really skilled guys. They both have, like you said, some pop with their offensive ability. And when you're a team like Niagara, you need a little bit of everything, because that's the reason you were the last place team in the OHL, is because there wasn't really one area of strength for you. I mean, without Daniil Gushkin, let's face it. I mean, Femus and Castle came on at the end of the year, but without Gushkin, this team pretty much had no offense for most of the year. So it's really, really important that these guys develop properly. But I think the first 3 picks for them are pretty solid building blocks. And then it just comes down to, I know there's a lot of stuff going around the team right now off the ice that we're not going to get into, but if the right people come into play and help these kids and put these kids in the right spot, these 3 are going to be really, really solid foundational building blocks for Niagara, on top of some of the building blocks that they already have in place.
Great stuff as always from Austin Broad of FC Hockey, the Charging Buffalo, the Fort Erie Meteors. This guy does it all. Austin, one more time, plug where they can find you on Twitter and where they can find your great work going forward into the NHL draft.
Yeah, so my work at FC Hockey is at FC Hockey on Twitter, or at NHL Entry Draft. That's the website that we kind of post all of our reports. At the Charging Buffalo and the 716 Future of the 716 podcast, plus myself at Austin_Broad. And thank you guys for having me on. It was really cool to talk to OHL draft, and hopefully I can come on a little bit more often through next season, and hopefully there's a little bit more positive stuff to be talking about in terms of the IceDogs play.
Absolutely. So we'll be in touch, Austin, but thanks a lot for taking the time out of watching the U18s, and I know you're doing some stuff with that as well. So thanks for taking some time out, and go enjoy the rest of the tournament, and we'll talk in the off season.
Talk in the off season, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Austin. There's Austin Broad from FC Hockey and the Charging Buffalo. Always great analysis from him, Kyle. Just general thoughts on kind of what Austin had to say there.
I'm glad the one thing I picked out from everything was that he said that the one thing that teams look for, and I didn't know this, but it makes sense, is what teams look for in the later rounds is if they can skate. Like skating's a big part, and then that the hockey sense and everything will come later. So you got to think that every team is looking at that going into the later rounds. I'd say maybe mostly, like, you never know. What if there's like a player that they see that has like an extremely good shot, maybe not the best skating, but the team thinks they could develop the player skating wise. You'll probably get a lot of those picks, but I do want to, this is very off topic. I do want to go back to where the IceDogs picked last, and that player in the 7th round, or not 7th round, 6th round. They took so they've corrected it 1. So it's just Boyutian. So that'll be interesting to see if I even pronounce that right. But the pick before, at 120 by Flint, Nicholas Iafrate, and I went and did some digging while they seen that. It is correct. He is the now cousin of Leafs great Al Iafrate.
Cousin?
He's in the cousin bracket on hockey. Was it Elite Prospects?
That's a very old cousin.
A very young cousin.
Well, I mean, Al Iafrate.
Yeah.
I mean.
So like it's I forget where the tree goes, but he's related to Al Iafrate. So
hopefully, yeah. For the Leaf fans, I don't know, but
and he played for the Don Mill Flyers, so Toronto boy. But yeah, I seen that last name. Like, I gotta see if this is related. And sure enough.
Good. Thanks for digging for that, Kyle.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great analysis here by me.
I like that. Finding some hidden gems with family members. I like that.
The IceDogs are picking here in about 10 to 12 picks with their 8th round pick, 147.
We're at 137 and they're at 147.
Okay,
so
10 picks. There you go. I can do math.
There you go. We got our next guest coming on very shortly, and he's a man that we're very familiar with when we're calling, or not calling, but when we're watching the games up in the press box. Joins us up there. The one and only Bill Potrecz.
Oh.
P Sports Niagara is going to join us for a few
Bill.
minutes. Going to add him to the call and get ready for it. Everybody get ready for the dial tone.
Oh, okay, I thought you had like a Ric Flair woo.
Oh, I mean, you got to give him that when he comes on. Big wrestling, big Four Horsemen fan. Yeah. So try to keep it on topic, but I know you guys, your wrestling stuff will be tingling there, but we're getting Bill on the call here. But Niagara again has picked a few players so far this afternoon, but it seems like Austin's very high on a couple of those players that took, especially in the 3rd and 4th round there. We are joined now on the Thrive Fantasy Hotline by the man, the myth, the legend, I guess you could say, the best, or sorry, not Bret Hart. I'm trying to think here. the styling and profiling, limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, the owner of BP Sports Niagara, the one and only Bill Potrecz. Bill, thanks a lot for joining us today, sir.
Geez, how do I follow that introduction? Yeah, I think we need Ric Flair himself here.
If we had those connections, he'd be on the call.
Well,
Yeah.
or we just need Jay Lethal because he does Ric Flair better than he can do himself. But
He does do him very well. So how are you guys doing this morning?
we're doing great, Bill. You're on the guest list here. Thanks a lot for coming on and discussing some IceDog stuff with us. Again, we're going into the 15th year of the IceDogs, and I know you've been covering this team since they've been here in Niagara. I know your BP Sports is obviously big into Junior B as well with the St. Catharines Falcons. But just what has it been like covering this team over this 15-year period? And you've kind of seen everything, as far as every player that's kind of come through Niagara that has gone on to do great things. But just where can people find you and just kind of general thoughts on covering this team over the years?
Well, thank you very much. We're bpsportsniagara.com, and we are everything and all things local. So thanks for the plug. We appreciate that. I was in Hamilton last night for Junior B, Fort Erie and Hamilton Game 7. So Hamilton won that. So it looks like it's going to be the Kilty Bees and the Falcons for the Golden Horseshoe Championship. So BP Sports will be all over that today and in the coming weeks. But right now it's draft time. Right now it's IceDogs. It's funny because I remember I covered the first IceDog game ever. Way back in 2007, that's when they played at the old Jack Aycliffe Arena, and boy, a lot of water's gone under the bridge since that time. A lot of players come and gone, a lot of coaches, a lot of controversy. It's never dull in IceDog land, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff over this 15-year period, and obviously we're going through a transition period here, Bill, with with what's going on in the front office and ownership and things like that. And we're not going to get into all that stuff, but what are your thoughts on just the team this year? And as we look towards the draft, they obviously took Sam Dickinson. Kevin He also looks like he's going to be a nice player. They've got some overagers coming out, but where do you think that this IceDogs team is, and kind of the spot that they're in after kind of this 2-year rebuild that they've kind of been in?
Yeah, I mean, rebuilds are never pleasant. They're never easy. There's a lot of stops and starts. We saw a lot of losses. Some of them were ugly losses, let's face it. But when you look at the rosters, particularly up front, I mean, I really like the young core of players. I mean, they've got a lot of good young forwards that I think can develop into legitimate OHL stars, starting with Panofimis and Cook, and there's just so many of them that I think are going to be really solid, good young players in the OHL. Josh Rosenzweig this year developed into an outstanding OHL goalie, and I don't think anyone saw that coming. He got cut a couple years ago, hooked on with the Niagara Falls Canucks, let 8 goals in one game in Thorold, and they cut him. And then he ended up in Welland. Things didn't go particularly well there. He comes back, a new man, and he was a fantastic goaltender for them this year. So I think things are looking good in net. I love things up front. And so Dickinson seems like it was the proper choice to go on defense. A good, solid defenseman. Everybody seems to think he's a consensus first-round pick. So I think they did a good job with that.
Yeah, something we hadn't discussed a lot, and we got Bill Potrecz from BP Sports Niagara joining us on the call, is we haven't really talked about goaltending too much today, Bill. So let's hone in on that a little bit. Again, you mentioned how Josh Rosenzweig's struggles going down to Junior B a couple years ago and then coming back up and playing so well for the IceDogs. Just how difficult is it for those goaltenders? You see, Bo Porosky was called up, but he never actually played for the IceDogs this year. Just how difficult is that transition going from a goalie that gets sent down to Junior B, going back up to the OHL, and just kind of over the years, you've seen so many goalies come and go. Is there really something tangible that you can see that this guy's going to be a solid OHL goaltender, or no, this guy's going to be more of a Junior B goaltender? Is there really anything that you can kind of pick and choose as far as what you see in the goaltenders going from Junior A to Junior B there?
Goaltending is the most fickle position. I mean, a goaltender can look great one night, great one shot, then let one in that he shouldn't. It's a really up and down position. The thing that impressed me with Rosenzweig, I always loved his size. He's a huge goalie. So if you look at him, he covers most of the net as it is. And he seems to have gotten really flexible this year. He seems to have his confidence has gone through the roof. and he's a new goalie. And I don't know where that came from, but maybe the year off really helped him in some ways, which sounds odd. But, seeing goalies go up and down, I mean, junior B hockey is very, very competitive, and it's very, very good. And to play at that level, you have to be an outstanding athlete. And then there's a whole new level when you go up to the OHL. So, I mean, you can be a great junior B goalie, go to the OHL, and all of a sudden it's a whole new ball game. So I remember talking to, I think it might have been Rosenzweig, but I think it was Rosenzweig. And basically he said one of the big differences was that in junior B, you had a lot of guys that were good players. And in the OHL, you had a lot of guys that were great players. And that's a huge difference. Just looking back over the goalies over the years in Niagara, I think Alex Nedeljkovic was always the one that stood out to me as the number one goalie to ever play here for the IceDogs. He was just outstanding. You could just see the way he moved. You could see the way he carried himself. He was going to be an NHL goalie, and sure enough, there he is.
And especially this year, Bill, we saw, I mean, how many times Niagara had to use call-ups because of all the injuries, the suspensions, the COVID outbreak that they had. They had to call up guys like Sammy Douglas-Najim, guys like Lucas Littlejohn, Tanner Ryan. Just how important is it to kind of have those guys in Junior B available and ready to come up if these, extreme circumstances do happen, and to kind of I know teams don't really have an exact one team that's their farm team, but they can basically use the whole league and kind of, pick and choose there. But just thoughts on being able to have those guys to call up and it's obviously a lot for those. It's a lot of pressure for those guys that want to come up to the OHL and be good right away. But Lucas Littlejohn scored 2 goals in his OHL debut, and Sammy Douglas-Najim was a top 4 defenseman there for a little bit of the latter half of the season when they had all those injuries. So just thoughts on how important that was with the IceDogs, and just in general how important that can be for those players being in OHL lineups when needed.
Yeah, well, it's huge. It's huge. I mean, I remember a player like Mason Howard or Vince Dunn, who were selected in the middle rounds, both got sent to Thorold, played a ton in their first year, all of a sudden came back and were legitimate OHL players after that. And they got a taste, they got a cup of coffee that first year too, with a game or two here and there. And just to have those players available where you can call up at the drop of a hat, as they say, it's huge. And by having the kids local, that's also very convenient, where a player comes in for the morning skate and he's not feeling well and they need somebody, they can call someone up right away. So it's outstanding. I remember when the team first came here and they were kind of feeling their way, and they would be calling guys up from the Falcons, and they weren't necessarily the best players, but they were players because they needed players. And, players that were still hoping to go NCAA obviously wouldn't go because that would ruin their chances. So there were times when they just picked up players just to fill out the roster. And, it was kind of amusing almost that's what it was. But things are much better now, and they've got a good pipeline with the Junior B. And it's a great Junior B league around here, too.
Joined by Bill Potrecz of BP Sports Niagara. I'll take it away.
The pick's not in yet. Okay, I thought for a second you were going to me for a pick.
Oh, I mean, you can talk to Bill, but just let's not talk about wrestling today.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna.
Can we talk some baseball?
Yeah, we'll change our podcast name.
My Angels are doing very well.
We'll talk about that.
I know Brandon won't want me to talk about that, but I do want to get your thoughts on the 2 players. Like, we asked this to Austin in the last guest. Obviously, the IceDogs having to fill a couple of empty spots in the lineup, like Van Loon, Gushin, and obviously the departing captain, Dakota Betts. Sam Dickinson looks like a guy for sure that looks like it can come in right away and fill in that spot. His drafting profile is excellent. He's got all the makings of a great two-way defenseman. What are your thoughts on the first 2 picks in Dickinson being that defenseman, Kevin He, who looks like he's going to be an exceptional speedster, and it's written here, firecracker of a release of a snapshot.
Yeah, well, I mean, as soon as I saw the name Kevin He, I thought when he scores his first goal, the great headline would be "He shoots, he scores." But I'll get that out. I'll get that out of my system.
We'll let you have that one.
We'll be making puns about that one all next year.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think that the IceDogs were, the way things shook out with the teams in front of them, picking the 3 forwards, that kind of played right into Niagara's hands. I mean, You always go for the best player available, and in this case, the best player available happened to be the best defenseman. So that was, that fit like a glove for Niagara right there. I think if Dickinson had gone earlier, they probably would have had to go for a forward, just because the next player available, probably the next best player available would have been a forward. So you always have to go the best player available and then go from there. So that absolutely fit like a glove for the IceDogs there. So I'll be anxious to see him come training camp in the fall and see how he fits in. And let's remember, as good as these guys are, it does take them time, especially as a defenseman, as a 16-year-old coming into the league.
Yeah.
There's going to be some growing pains, no matter how good they are. It does take a while, but he certainly seems to have all the tools and all the upside to be a top-notch player.
Yeah, we saw Alec Leonard's progression through the year, Bill, obviously, with the double cohort draft class. We saw a lot more rookies than we'd usually see on the team when they started to kind of get rid of some of those veterans that started on the team. And Alec Leonard really progressed as the season went on. And like you said, it's going to take time. This guy isn't going to be, Bobby Orr come out first day of training camp and light the team up. But again, there are going to be growing pains. But have you seen that over the years with this team where they take a defenseman high and they end up playing those top? We saw Isaac Enright start as rookie, but he wasn't in kind of that top 2, top 4 role. Do you think that they'll kind of take it slow with a guy like Dickinson, maybe have him start in the third pair, pair him with somebody maybe like a Landon Cato or an Isaac Enright, a stable defenseman who's already been there for a few years to kind of get his feet wet for a little bit and then start to move him up the depth chart into maybe a top 4 role as the season goes on in the second half?
Absolutely. That makes the most sense, because what you don't want to do is overwhelm a kid and have him lose his confidence right off the bat. And then sometimes it takes a long time for that to come back. So, I mean, even with Leonard, he didn't really stand out early, and, he didn't really need to stand out early, but boy, by the end of the season, he really, really stood out as one of the top players back there. I really like his game a lot. I think he's going to be a dominant player, and, maybe Dickinson can follow in his footsteps a little bit. So, I remember probably the best defenseman I've ever seen it's an easy choice, is Alex Pietrangelo when they picked him first year in Niagara, and he was a stud right from day one. But those guys are few and far between.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Vince Dunn didn't start right away. It obviously took Ryan Panther a little bit to get going before. He obviously is the leader in all-time shots on goal in a season as a defenseman for this team. So just over the years, just how important, I believe we asked this to our first guest, Ted Lehman, the radio voice of the IceDogs. Just how important is it to kind of have that number one defenseman? We see guys in the OHL now and the top teams, they have that true number one defenseman. Just how important is that, and how just if you have a guy that can go up there and be somebody to be that power play quarterback, but also be dependable in his own zone. And at the OHL level, how important is it to kind of depend on a guy like that? And hopefully they have this with Dickinson, but just in general over the years, the IceDogs having those number one defensemen, just how important is that to the team's success?
Yeah, well, it's everything. I mean, I think you start net. No one's ever going to win without a good goalie. So you can almost just take that out of the equation. That's a given. You need a good goalie, and then it comes down to a number one elite defenseman, and then that top-notch center. And those kind of players, those number one centers, those top-notch defensemen, they don't grow on trees, and you can't find them anywhere. So when you have one, you have to hold on to them. And I think it might have been someone in the NHL I once heard say, those top-notch centers and defensemen, there's only one way to get them. You have to draft them, because once teams get them, they don't get rid of them. So that's how you build your team, around a center, a top-notch D, and a good goalie, and then you fill in the pieces from there. So hopefully Dickinson becomes that one day.
Oh, yeah, the IceDogs just picked. So at 8th round, 147, they take another name, Kwishi Han from the North York Rangers.
There you go. So another pick for Niagara here. I believe that, have they not taken like 2 or 3 players from this North York Rangers team so far?
I believe so.
Yeah, but Bill,
obviously they're familiar with that team and felt more comfortable picking from someone that they've seen versus someone that they haven't seen, because it's really difficult to see everybody.
Oh yeah.
I like what you said there about building around the top center, the top D, and having that goaltender and kind of trying to fill out the rest from there.
Yeah.
If you're a betting man, with what we saw from the Eastern Conference this year, we didn't get to see much from the West, but who's kind of sticking out to you as the team to watch out for as far as the Eastern Conference representative? Obviously, Hamilton went all in this year, and they've gotten rid of a lot of their draft picks to go and contend. Obviously, you know that Kingston's very top heavy, but their top six is very lethal if they could get that depth scoring. But who are you looking at from watching all those teams play the IceDogs this year from the Eastern Conference as your team to watch, having a chance at the OHL Championship?
Yeah, it was an odd year this year. I mean, I kind of miss seeing the West. I don't think we see the West enough as it is even during a regular year. I mean, teams like Kitchener and Guelph and Windsor, London, they only come in once a year, which I often thought was really odd. And then we're playing Mississauga every other night. So I wish the schedule was a little bit more unbalanced, but I get why they do it. At least there's a good reason for it. And this year, obviously, it was COVID related. So, I mean, if I had to pick one team, it's I'm not going off the board here at all, but Hamilton is the team that you really, really got to like. I mean, like you said, they went all in, and I'd be shocked if they didn't win it this year. I mean, they've got good pedigree there, and they seem to know what they're doing, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them win.
Yeah, but before we let you go, just you quickly mentioned it. How odd was the schedule this year, Bill? Obviously, we didn't get to see the Western Conference. You played teams in your division so many times. I feel like I don't need to ever watch Barrie, Mississauga, and North Bay ever again because we've seen them so many times. But just thoughts on how they kind of played out the schedule because of COVID, playing within your conference only, except for having to play Erie, which they're in the Western Conference. Still, that could be a whole other discussion. But thoughts on the way the schedule kind of laid out for this season and in the IceDogs. I mean, they were rebuilding anyway, but they were going up against some good teams. And do you think that maybe some of the records were kind of inflated, or maybe they weren't as accurate as maybe they would be if we were able to play every single team within the Ontario Hockey League this year?
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed like when the IceDogs were hitting, a real big losing streak, who comes in? Hamilton. Who comes in? North Bay, and it's like, really? Where you might have caught a break here or there, but I think we all have to just take a step back and a deep breath and just say, we have to remember why it was like this, because at the beginning of the year, we didn't even know if there was going to be a year. And then we had the little COVID scare there in January. So, I mean, I think we would have all taken what we got early in the year because we didn't know what was going to happen. So it was a byproduct of COVID, and it was something that was kind of a necessary evil, I think. And it wasn't a normal year, but it sure as heck was better than the year before, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was nice to be back, and just even that first training camp or those first couple of preseason games, just us being back up there and having hockey to watch, and even throughout the year when we were the only ones in the building other than some
that was great.
Some dummies that they put around.
Weird.
Yeah, and at heads and the fake crowd noise and that. Just thoughts on just that in general, just being such a
hell of a year.
Obviously for the players it was weirder, but for us just being there, it must have been odd. For as many years you've been covering hockey, it must have been a weird kind of feeling to kind of be in an arena like that.
It was completely odd, especially at the OHL level, to go into a 5,000 seat arena and there's more players on the ice than there are in the stands, and it was really weird. I think the one cool thing about it was you could hear all the coaches and refs and players swearing with that. So that part was pretty cool, and there was no one there to offend, so they could pretty much say whatever they wanted. So that part was pretty cool. But yeah, it was. Thankfully, that didn't go on too long, and we quickly got back to half capacity, and then full capacity, obviously. And it'll be interesting to tell people about this years down the line. So the one year they played, and they didn't even have fans there, and it was like, what? And it was like, this is something that we had to go through, but the bottom line is we got a season in, the players were able to play and develop, and that's the most important thing, and hopefully we never have to go through that again, because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty much sick of that.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah, 100%. So I know you got an article up right now, IceDogs draft defenseman and winger on day one at BP Sports Niagara, Bill. So everybody go check that out as well. Before you let us go, Bill, just once again, let our viewers and listeners know where they can find your great work and all the great articles that you guys write on a weekly basis.
Well, thank you very much, Bernie Pachalski and I. Thankfully, we're both have initials of BP, or our website would be called something much different. So BPSN Sports doesn't, goes pretty well, but it was BPKW Sports. It might not sound quite as good, but anyway, it's bpsportsniagara.com, and we just like to think of ourselves as an online sports section. And we write, usually 20 to 25 stories a week when things are hot and heavy. And today's on today's menu, we're going to talk to Luca Testa from the St. Catharines Falcons, Niagara North kid that got drafted by London.
Nice.
And we'll be doing a big Ice Dog roundup and see what's going on there. Probably head down to the arena later. So there'll be lots of stuff on BP Sports later. And Bernie's out of Champions Golf, so there's all kinds of stuff to read. And we would certainly appreciate the plug and wish you guys the best going forward as well.
Absolutely. Can't wait till next September, Bill, when we can have our chats and give each other the 4 up there in the press box. But I'm sure we'll talk in the off season. Thanks so much for coming on today, and enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Well, thanks so much. Good luck, and we'll be in touch, guys. See you later.
Thanks, Bill.
See you later, Bill.
There's Bill Potrecz from BP Sports Niagara. Kyle, always a pleasure talking to Bill.
Always. Every game in that press box, man. He's a great listen, and he's got so much insight into junior hockey. It's always great to pick his brain some days up there, and then also, to shoot the shit a little bit up there. But I just seen a pick. Didn't know this was even a team, but hilarious. Just now by the Owen Sound attack from the Detroit Little Caesars.
Yep. See, I told you, all these Michigan teams, they have these sponsors. Surprised we haven't seen Bell Tire either.
That is hilarious. But
yeah.
Austin Baker, what a name. That's a hockey name right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill's about junior B hockey. I think that's very important too, is like having these guys make that leap from junior B to the Ontario Hockey League and junior A. That can be so tough.
I didn't even know Vince Dunn played in junior B. That was something I totally forgot about, that he played 1 year in Thorold. So, they could, and then he was middle around pack, and look what that, he ended up being he went in the first round in the NHL, did he not?
No, but he ended up being a top 4 defenseman in the NHL, won a Stanley Cup,
and now is on the an expansion franchise.
Yeah, and he's actually on their top pair. So I mean, again, you've seen mid-round picks end up turning into gems. Yeah, it can happen.
There was also another pick at 138 by the Sioux Greyhound. I can't find anything, but Justin Tavares went to the Sioux Greyhound at 138.
They saw the last name. They're like, no, you know
maybe.
What?
They're like, oh, maybe.
Yeah, so you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah. But IceDogs' next pick here is in 9 more picks, as we're at 158. The IceDogs have 167. And I believe that's their 9th round pick yet. That's their 9th round pick.
Yeah. It hasn't been convenient that we've always had to interrupt our guests to make the call, to make the picks for the Niagara IceDogs. Can't do it when we're not on the calls,
But the next 1, 2, 3, 4 picks are regular Niagara draft picks. They're not acquired by anybody. So it's where we would have been all along.
Take a look. What are we looking at as far as the draft pick database? How many picks left?
We're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more picks because they do not have a 13th round pick.
Okay. So I guess general thoughts on what they've done today so far. I mean, again, we it's hard to say. We don't know what these players are going to end up turning out to be, right? Like we don't watch play hockey. We're not here, at the small rinks watching these guys play. But it just seems like with what do they really have a strategy going into this, or do you think that they're just kind of picking off the board here? And
I think they have to go with whatever like he said, like the scouts can't draft everybody, or can't scout everybody. So like it's tough to look, and then when you're getting to these deep rounds, right? If players on your draft sheet, on your scouting sheet, have been taken already, you're kind of just like going probably by other scouting reports and saying, okay, this guy he's been touted as a good skater. Okay, we take him. He's the best available skater first, right? So, but you never know. I mean, like we just talked about Vince Dunn, who went in the middle of the OHL draft, ended up being one of their best defensemen. So you never know with these picks. It'll all just come down to how they transition from AAA to the OHL. There's a big adjustment there. But I don't know. I really don't know. It's something I'll probably have to talk to if we ever get to talk to one of the scouts there at the rink, like what's the strategy going into like the later round picks? Like I'm talking like from like 9 to 15 or 10 to 15. Because it seems like I'm watching like the draft board go, and I don't know how fast they come in and how they update the site, but sometimes it's really fast. So I imagine just they already had the pick like 3 rounds ago, and they're like, yeah, take him.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's no Florida Panthers situation where they take a timeout in like the 7th round. So
we don't need that happening again.
no.
But to recap Niagara's day on day 2 so far, Andrew Vermeulen, Boyotian, Oscar Wu, and Quishi Han. They've definitely gone off the name list to make it struggle for Kyle today. They couldn't just take a guy, Mike Smith or somebody. They had to pick some guys
Mike Smith
with some obscured names to
Yeah.
make Kyle work for it this morning.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is, and eventually we'll hear the proper pronunciation because we called Panophemus for like the entire first year he was drafted until we got back to the rink after COVID was done. Well, sort of over, and
Done?
we kind of find out his real pronunciation of his last name. So,
Yeah.
and it's Femus, not Femus.
Shout out to Chris Femus, fan of the show.
Yeah, fan of the show, Chris Femus. Oh, if he's listening live, shout outs to you. I don't know. He may
Not
be.
sure. Probably doing dad stuff today. Maybe
I mean, yeah, it's Saturday, right?
Probably got to go get a haircut or something. I don't know.
He's got to
Forget it.
shine those white shoes of his, man. Gotta
Maybe
get
maybe Pano's treating Chris to something. I don't know.
he better be.
Yeah.
You always got to treat the parents, man. They put in hockey parents put in so much work.
Yeah.
In kids growing up, man, it's insane. The amount of hours they put into their kid with the morning practices, the trainings, and everything, man. You got to treat the parent. The parents are the biggest thing.
Yeah, especially for our next guest. He knows a lot about that. His daughter is in a pretty competitive hockey right now, so as a goaltender. So we'll get his thoughts on that. We've got Steve Clark, the TV host,
Clarky,
play commentator for the Niagara IceDogs. I believe he's called every game or every season for the Niagara IceDogs since they came to Niagara.
Wow.
So he does a great job on the TV side with Ed Burkholder and Al Galloway. And as well, he also calls games for the McMaster Marauders as well. So Steve's he's 4 higher, whatever you want him to call. Kyle, he'd probably call your men's league team if you wanted to.
I don't think he wants to watch that.
He could probably make that sound good, though. That's what I'm trying to say.
Probably.
He can make your men's league game sound pretty good. But before we get Steve on the call here, Kyle, Niagara, how many picks are they away?
They are now 4 picks away.
Oh, of course. Perfect timing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what time it is, so everybody get ready.
Yes. Favorite part of the show.
You can tell when we're making our calls, right?
Dude, can we? What makes you say that?
Transferring the call to Steve Clark here. Niagara has picked in the 7th round.
What's the hotline?
Now,
Hello.
joining us now on the Thrive Fantasy Hotline is the TV play-by-play commentator for the Niagara IceDogs. He is the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. Steve Clark joins us on the line today, big wrestling fan, so I had to get that plug in there. Steve, Kyle, and Brandon here with you again. Thanks for joining us today, sir.
Not happy to do so. I really appreciate the introduction. The pressure's on. I hope I can be the excellence of execution on this.
Well, you're following Bill, so I mean.
Yeah.
Oh well, it's like following Elvis.
Oh man, wow, really pumping the tires today. But yeah, so Steve, obviously you do a lot of great work with the Niagara IceDogs. I know you do some work with the McMaster Marauders. Just where can people find all your great play-by-play work and all your sports media stuff in general?
Well, I mean, I broadcast, for McMaster on OUA TV and called their football, basketball, and volleyball stuff this year. And I'll give you a little bit of breaking news. I'm going to be calling the East-West Bowl next Saturday, which is down at McMaster, which features all the top university players in the country who are draft eligible for the CFL. So that's pretty exciting. And yeah, for the IceDogs, all your TV in Niagara, my favorite place.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Where can they follow you on Twitter, Steve?
Steve Clark Media.
Perfect.
For all sorts of takes on bad 90s pop culture references,
Great
80s pop culture references, and always, when it comes to breaking news, I'm always the 23rd guy to break good news. So there you go.
Love that. But Steve, you've obviously covered the Niagara IceDogs. Now we're going into the 15th anniversary of the team, and obviously it's draft day. What have been some of your favorite draft moments for the Niagara IceDogs over the years? Is there anything that really stuck out to you as far as like some of your favorite players that they ended up taking that became great IceDogs, or just in general about how this draft process plays out? Because it can be a crapshoot when you have 15 rounds and you're drafting, 15-year-olds into the or 16-year-olds into the Ontario Hockey League here. Just general thoughts on that over the years.
I always like how people do refer to it as a crapshoot, and it is, because the 15-year-old and the 16-year-old maturity, both physically and emotionally, could be so much different. But also at the same time, though, there's so many outlets to watch these guys. There's so much video that's been taken over, and that's the big thing that's changed over the years, just the amount of content that scouts and teams are able to gather, throughout the years. And I think it's a little less of a crapshoot than normal, but obviously, you kind of, you take a deep breath when it is time to pick players. One of my draft memories that first came to mind when you asked me this question was how the IceDogs drafted Dougie Hamilton in the second round. And it was one of those situations in which he was a clear first-round talent, but there was word that he would only want to play for Niagara because that's where his brother Freddie was drafted. So the IceDogs were able to scoop him in the second round, and I think that became, one of the real great all-time IceDogs that you could, ever imagine in both the Ontario Hockey League and the Pro Hockey League. So there have certainly been some greats for Niagara that have been taken over the years. That's for sure.
Joined on the line by Steve Clark, the TV play-by-play announcer for the Niagara IceDogs. You do great stuff there with Ed Burkholder and Al Galloway on the OHL Tonight. But just what are your thoughts on this season, Steve? Obviously, again, it was a rebuilding year for the IceDogs. So many trials and tribulations that they went through with, the COVID shutdown, the suspensions, the injuries, having only 4 defensemen dressed for, many games this season. As somebody who was calling the games all season long and got to see that up close and in person, just what were your thoughts on how the team kind of went throughout the year? And do you think that they've kind of hit their stride with a lot of this double cohort draft class as they finished out the year and looking towards next season as a really big growing pain year that they took this season? Hopefully learned a lot of good things going into the next season here.
Yeah, I really, you made a number of great points during that question. And to say it was an up and down season, I think every single OHL team can say that, given COVID and the shutdown and having no fans in the building and some fans in the building. Then you add, obviously, the big IceDogs story with the suspensions that came out. The one thing I did notice is that, particularly in the second half of the season, there was a real growth with some of the IceDogs. And you talked about that double cohort draft and the 2020 picks in particular, really did find their stride. I mean, if you take a look just at what Pano Fimis was able to do in the second half of the season, particularly after his injury, and I think that he's launched himself into top 3 or 4 round draft consideration for the NHL draft. Aiden Castle provided a number of fantastic moments. Bryce Cook had 18, 19 goals, and then you take a look at a couple of the 2019 guys. I thought Dan Michaud was an excellent acquisition, by the IceDogs, and really found his stride as that big, rangy center by the end of the year. Brendan Sirizotti was a highly touted minor hockey player, second-round pick of Ottawa, and the IceDogs scooped him up. He became a great potential player. Josh Rosenzweig emerged, and I really think Joey Costanzo emerged. So the IceDogs are pretty, solid at goal. So I tend to focus on the positive things that happened, and that makes me really excited, along with the, a couple of the guys they drafted in this draft class. And the 2021s, I mean, again, sorry, I'm going on a long time here, but you pick 2 guys whose statistics you look and, they won't resonate with you. But Andrew Wysick and Alec Leonard, a couple of 2021, 2020 and 2021 draft picks who really played a lot of key minutes and a lot of minutes that first-year defensemen don't normally get to play. And I think those are great investments into what these guys can do next year. So, yeah, I feel real positive, along with a couple guys they got this year, that it's going to be better, better times ahead in Niagara next year for sure.
Yeah. Yes, and the IceDogs did choose their 9th round pick while Steve was talking there, and a goaltender from the Sioux Junior Greyhounds under 18 team, Charlie Burns.
Yep.
So now we've taken a goalie.
First defenseman taken for the Niagara IceDogs in the 2022 draft. Steve, you made a lot of good points there about the young defenseman playing a lot of top minutes and even call-ups like Lucas Littlejohn, Sammy Douglas Najum. But in net, how confident are you moving forward that the Josh Rosenzweig and Joey Costanzo tandem will be something that they look at next season? Again, it's tough to say because you want one of those guys to stand out as the number one. But do you think that they would go into the season and kind of try to have a healthy competition between those two guys and have one kind of emerge as the starter? We know how high they were on a guy like Joey Costanzo as a second-round pick. So what are your thoughts on how they're going to play with the goaltending situation next season?
Well, goalies are tough to figure out because they do draft it. They do sort of develop at a different level than and a different time period than a lot of other players. And Rosenzweig's an excellent example. You watched him play a couple of years ago when he came up with Niagara League, facing the type of shooters that the OHL can possess. And we know that goals per game were up substantially this year, and I thought he really matured as the season went on. And IceDogs have never drafted a goalie as high as they did for Joey Costanzo, so they obviously have a lot of expectations for him, and I think he started to meet those expectations towards the end of the year. Throw the stats out the window; they don't look particularly enticing, but you take a look at the whole package, and it's Joey Costanzo's draft year, and I think you'll see probably the number of games ratio between Rosenzweig and Costanzo be closer to 50-50 than you would think, maybe kind of a 60-40 in favor of Rosenzweig, but that's just me kind of picking at numbers.
And Joey Costanzo, you brought up a good point there as a 16-year-old goaltender. He was one of only two 16-year-old goaltenders in the all of the Ontario Hockey League that was playing consistently in net. So again, like you said, it's not common for a goaltender of that age to be playing so much, but I think that was obviously a very good learning experience for him, and a lot of the growing pains that he went through as far as the team that he played in front of, giving up an average of 40 to 50 shots a game. I'm sure that he got a lot of practice back there and got accustomed to the OHL style very quickly after getting thrown in there once Tucker Tynan was obviously traded and Josh Rosenzweig was injured at times, and Joey Costanzo had to go in there and kind of learn on the spot and kind of be thrown into the fire. And I think he lived up to that expectations. Like you said, looking outside the stats, I think that Costanzo did a good job given all the circumstances.
Yeah, I would agree. And if you take a look at kind of like the trend for a young backup goalie, I mean, they get served up to the back end of home and homes or the front end of home and homes, the tough road games. I mean, for that being like the Bulldogs or the Mississauga Steelheads, who were lights out earlier in the year, not so much later in the year in North Bay. So he was playing against some tough matchups and kind of had to endure a couple lumps going through that. And as I said, by the end of the year, he was pretty solid. The one thing with Costanzo, again, this is just from observing it and calling the games, he did have the tendency to let in the odd soft goal. And that, I mean, all goalies do that, and I'm sure, it's one of those things that, again, maturity, I think, will help correct that. But it certainly was something that I looked at during the course of the year. But I still think it's going to be real fun to watch him grow and develop. And I do think that in his draft year, which will be next year, that he will launch himself into a conversation for sure.
Right. Kyle, I know you want to ask Steve about a couple of the top picks for Niagara, so I'll let you take over.
So, Steve, Niagara going into this year, obviously we've asked a lot of our guests today this question, so I'm going to ask you this. So, obviously with the loss because of overage with Van Loon and Dakota Betson and Gushin, obviously doesn't look like he's coming back to the OHL. The IceDogs take a defenseman with their first pick yesterday, fourth overall, Sam Dickinson, and then they take Kevin He, follow closely by that early on in the second round. Do you, if you've heard anything about these two players, I feel like these were two strong picks to take after losing a player, I'm going to say like Gushin and Dakota Best to fill in those roles. And if you've heard anything about these two, what can you say about these two young players?
Only going on what I've read, Kyle, and the very, very limited video that I was able to see. But by all rights, the IceDogs hit a home run with the Sam Dickinson pick. And when you're picking fourth, which I know was unfortunate given that the IceDogs had a chance to win the Michael Misa sweepstakes, you kind of had a vision that it was going to be Malcolm Spence going number 2, and then you knew that Nathan Villeneuve could have been in play at the number 3 spot, and then it was Dickinson, who seemed to be kind of a consensus number 4 that had emerged from some of the draft stuff that I was I was reading. So when the dominoes kind of fell and Dickinson was there, I mean, and you said it right. I mean, the IceDogs are graduating. I mean, key forwards and a lot of goals in Gustin and Van Loon, and then obviously defensemen with Dakota Betts, and they've got a young defense core along with a couple of younger veterans in Enright and Cato. That, I mean, you've got a defenseman who by all rights is mature. He's a big defenseman, and I expect that to obviously change because he's not even yet 16 years old. He averaged almost a point a game. He seems to be the real deal and the total package. And the other guy, Kevin Key, who you spoke of, again, every single mock draft I had him as first-round talent. So for the IceDogs to be able to grab him at the number 25 spot, I think it was, or 24, 25 spot, was, I think that's outstanding. And a guy who, again, could be, one of those key pieces, a bottom six guy who could develop and emerge, by the midseason. So I think the IceDogs did real well on their picks.
Do you think that we've seen what happens today and what the roster looks like? Do you think that there might be a move in the offseason for maybe an overage player? Could you see the IceDogs maybe thinking that they need to go and acquire a top overage player to kind of add to that group and to add some veteran leadership? Like when they went and added a guy like Liam Van Loon from Hamilton, and he was probably everything and more that they could have wanted from him. He had a career high in goals playing for the IceDogs. And do you think that they kind of go that route, or do you think that they kind of feel like the roster that they have right now is the roster that they're going to go into next season with?
If it's me, I mean, I believe, again, this is just me kind of looking at the roster and not really analyzing it. I believe Cam Peters is the only potential returning OA from what I can remember. And he, injury prone. He missed a lot of last year. And so you've got 2 or 3 spots that you can play with. And if I'm the IceDogs, I certainly utilize all 3 or 2 of those 3 spots to try and fill some holes. And whether it's a quality forward that you're going to get or like a quality defenseman, then I definitely think the IceDogs should at least have 2 of those OA spots filled, plugging holes. And the one thing with OAs is that their market price can fluctuate. I mean, they got Liam Van Loon for an 8th round pick, which is outstanding value too. So you have to look at what the kind of value that you're giving up for 1 year of a player. But I definitely think the IceDogs need to spend to get a couple OA guys to help fill those holes. Because again, this team has got a potential, and a couple of good OAs could mean all the difference in the world between, a 6 seed and the 4 seed or however you want to define it.
And Steve, I want to ask you quickly before we let you go. I know you've seen so many great players over the years, and with the whole exceptional status that happens in the Ontario Hockey League. Obviously, you mentioned Michael Misa getting it. We didn't see Ryan Rubrick get it, which was unfortunate because I think that would have been an easy sell with obviously Dylan Rubrick playing in Niagara. But looks like they might have lucked out getting Dickinson. But seeing guys like Connor McDavid, John Tavares, obviously Shane Wright over the years, those exceptional status players. Do you think that maybe by not getting an exceptional status player, maybe that might be better for the IceDogs? You get maybe an Andrew Ragazzino that's a 5-year player for the Niagara IceDogs, and once those players get drafted with exceptional status, most of the time they get drafted in the NHL and they're gone in about 2 years. So do you think that there might be an advantage to not getting one of those exceptional status players, even though that they're so great? But you look at a team like Kingston, who most likely is going for it this year because they probably won't have Shane Wright back on the team next year. So do you think that there's pros and cons there with the exceptional status player and maybe not getting one of them?
Well, okay. Well, let's put it this way. First of all, yeah, I'd love to have Michael Misa on the team and know that you have him for 3 years, and then he's gone. But I think you make a great point in terms of, you're right. And then Shane Wright was the first guy, that I thought of, and McDavid, is that that once their draft year hits, they're done. They're gone. You're going to get 3 years out of them, and maybe 1 or 2 of those years you're going to lose them for a significant period of time with a World Junior type situation. So there's both pros and cons to having that player, and basically with a guy like I said, a Michael Misa, the clock starts ticking right away in terms of his development, and now when you take a look at the guys who have got that elite status as the exceptional player, I mean, you're not looking at a fringe player here. I mean, the only guy who didn't really work out, and I say that with all due respect to Sean Day, who had turned into a very good defenseman by the end of his OHL career, and somebody who, is playing pro hockey right now, is that, I mean, you're talking Connor McDavid, Connor Bedard, Shane Wright. These guys are quality talents. team-changing, franchise-changing talents for their OHL team. So obviously it's tough to not have that. But at the same time, though, yeah, I mean, I loved Andrew Magazine was my favorite Ice Dog of all time. I love the guy. 5 years, captain. He was fantastic. So, yeah, if that's the I guess the consolation prize, I'll take that any day of the week.
Kyle, any final thoughts for Steve before we let him go?
No, he's nailed it on the head, too. I am excited for what Sam Dickinson can bring to the team. Same with Kevin. He, too, really top picks there. And then, as he mentioned, projected to be in the first round. Us getting him early second is a really good thing to see as well. So, can't wait to see you next year again, Steve, and to call more IceDog games in the future, and see you down at the Meridian Center.
I'm looking forward to it. I said September can't come around soon enough, can it?
I know you're going to be calling your daughter's games there as she's trying to take that next step in her goaltending career. So I'm sure you're driving the parents nuts, doing the play-by-play over there. But
well, I drive the parents nuts, but I'm way too nervous to call any games involving her. Being a goalie dad takes its toll.
Yeah, and you're doing great as a hockey dad, and we talked about that, how difficult that job is with all the other stuff you got going on. So thanks a lot for taking the time out to join us today, Steve, and we'll talk to you again hopefully in the off season again sometime, and I'm sure you'll be talking to us about wrestling, I'm sure.
I look forward to it. Brandon, Kyle, take care.
Thanks, see you later, Steve.
See ya. Bye.
There is the TV play-by-play voice for the Niagara IceDogs, the one and only Steve Clark. So
I do got to say something here. It has nothing to do with Steve, and there's nothing against him. But I'm going to apologize to the YouTube audience because there are times today I'm going to have a word with our pals at GOJHL that it disconnected, I think, twice throughout the show today. So I do apologize to that, but it connects. Thank God that the software we use connects it right back automatically. But come on now. Why does this only happen when we're live? Like whenever I'm streaming or doing a podcast, this is the only time it does it. So I'm going to have a word with our pals at GOJHL about this. This is nonsense. I pay for the best Wi-Fi that they have and they offer. This new fiber optic stuff. This shouldn't be happening.
Great stuff from Steve there, especially about the exceptional status. Especially about the exceptional status players. I mean, it's such a double-edged sword, right? Because you get those types of guys, and then obviously Sean Day is really the only guy that hasn't worked out in the Ontario Hockey League. Again, he's playing in the American Hockey League, so he's still playing in pro hockey, but he didn't really pan out to be that top end, like the others have, like the John Tavares, the Connor McDavid, the Shane Wright, the even Connor Bedard out west.
Man, is he ever a stud? That guy.
And again, Michael Misa, there's a lot of expectation and a lot of pressure that goes into that. I mean, we saw how much pressure was on Pano Themis, and he was A, not an exceptional status player, and B, he was the second overall pick. And we saw how much pressure it was on him going into a team and kind of trying to be, the savior of the IceDogs, and that people try to put that label onto these young players. And guys, they're 15, 16 years old here. Again, I know that they're going to have to know what it's like to have media pressure and things like that if they want to have pro careers. But when you get somebody like that, it's going to take time. Like, they're not going to be Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby from day one here. So again, now Saginaw getting Michael Misa, I don't know if they are going to expect, the world from him in year one, but again, it's just very tough, especially as a 15-year-old, and you're not going to get right away. I mean, Steve talked about the development having to start right away, but at the same time, that there is going to be that developmental time and those growing pains that they're going to have to work through in order to get to that spot in their career.
Yeah, it's true. And you should think about it. In 2 years, the World Junior Team Canada team could have a team, if Misa works out, to have Michael Misa and Connor Bedard on the same team.
If Connor Bedard comes back.
If he comes back. Well, fingers crossed. But anyways, Niagara got a pick here in 4 picks at 10th round, 187.
Perfect. So we should have that before our last guest, Rob Hubbard, joins us to end the show today. But to me, Kyle, I don't know about you, but this 3 hours has flown by.
It is flown by.
I don't know if that's thanks to our great guests that we've had today.
I'm gonna say it's the guests because we would be boring for 3 hours. We talk about what we want to talk about in the first half hour and be like, so how about bread these days?
Yeah.
Good stuff.
great having so many guests today and so much great analysis and again stuff that obviously that I wouldn't think of that our guests are bringing up. So always good to talk to people that are cover the OHL, cover the IceDogs, and just cover junior hockey in general. It's been I feel like it's been a nice mix, giving you guys some diversity with our guests today. I feel like it was an informative 3 hours if you guys, or I guess 2.5 so far, if you guys have stayed with us throughout the show. We tried to kind of make that as far as kind of trying to give you a little bit of different perspective. But our next guest just texted me that he's going to be ready to go at 11:30 to end the show.
By the way, I think I just seen our first honey bake sighting with this last pick. Hamilton at 183, 9th round. Daniel Barahowski from the Detroit Honey Baked.
I haven't got to play any really much of the epic music today, so I'm going to play it since Niagara's almost on the clock. But didn't want to interrupt it with our guests on. We interrupted them enough to make the picks. So
wow,
Niagara's up with 10th, 11th.
This is going to be the pick, man. This is going to be the franchise player right here.
Don't put this much pressure on that kid. But yeah, I mean, it looks like we're going to be off the air before the draft ends, but that's okay. I mean. If you guys are really interested in looking at the 14th round pick,
by all means, go to OntarioHockeyLeague.com/draft.
Yeah, or just follow the IceDogs. They'll post I'm sure they'll post a nice graphic of whoever that player ends up being. But yeah, so Niagara, interesting. They took that goalie Charlie Burns in the 9th round, first goalie taken. So their pick distribution so far, if you guys are keeping track, they've taken 2 defensemen and 4 forwards, and then a goaltender. And that actually breaks down into 2 left wingers, a right winger, a center, 2 left D, and a goaltender. So no love for the right D so far, apparently, but that's okay.
But that's another goalie in the system, because I believe, I want to say Rosenzweig is going maybe into, it'll be one, no, it won't be his overage year this year. It'll be overage year than the year after.
Yeah, but
and you're going to need to stock the shelves a little bit.
Still got Bo Porowski, who again was the good soldier this year, had to be called up and sent down.
We'll have to Bo leave, man.
He was called up and sent down I don't know how many times, just to deal with what was going on with everything with this team and the amount of times that their roster changed throughout the season. So we'll see if Bo Porowski gets the shot next year or not. But yeah, so again, Kyle, I mean, it's hard to say, but have you kind of enjoyed Niagara's draft so far? I mean, we don't know a whole lot about these guys, but just kind of the way that they're going about it, the types of players that they're taking, like Austin mentioned, making sure that you take guys that have a lot of speed and you can kind of build the hockey IQ and kind of the X's and O's after that. But are you kind of satisfied with the way that things have fallen so far for the IceDogs?
So obviously, like, the first 2 picks are crucial. Even the 3rd round pick as not Austin, but Colin alluded to earlier on in the show, I think are great picks. And the rest, you're kind of, like, we've also heard that the IceDogs and scouts and usually OHL scouts will look at, if they can skate, right? So a lot of late picks are if they can skate, the hockey sense and stuff will come after. But I think they're just, I think I'm going to guess a strategy in the late rounds is stocking the shelves, right? Because like when the years go by, you're going to have, maybe there's going to be some trades, right? You might trade a couple of players for one overager, right? And you're going to you have those empty spaces. That's where these picks come in, right? You sign these prospects, or maybe you don't sign them right away. They end up having a really great junior B career and they accelerate in growth. And it's like, okay, well, maybe now we give them a chance. And now you saw a lot of that this year too, with certain situations where they had to sign a few players just because they had voids to fill, right? So anything could happen in the OHL. So I think that's where the late round picks come in too. But also there could be someone in those late round picks. Like I joked, like the franchise players are going to be here at 10, but what if this 10th pick ends up being a really crucial player of the IceDogs lineup in 2 or 3 years? So, I think there's strategy and then there's non-strategy stuff that goes into these late round picks. I mean, you can't compare it to the NHL because the NHL has less rounds than they only have 7 rounds, so it's a different ball game here with these later picks, but needed especially to fill a lot of the voids that may or may not occur.
Yeah, it's these drafts are always interesting to see how they play out over the years. But again, with the IceDogs being their 15th anniversary season coming up, it's
do we get a patch? Do you think it's gonna be like a 15-year patch, or do we have to wait for like 50 or 25?
Well, they did one for 10, so I don't know if they do halves with the 15, 20. I don't know. We'll have to see what ends up happening next year. But I'd like to see something for the 15th anniversary. Has Niagara picked yet? Are they on the clock?
They are not on the clock. North Bay is on the clock at 184. We are at 187.
Oh, okay. Well, we might as well just transfer through our last guest and then just kind of interrupt them like
it's
we've
like
done
this pick knows that we have a guest coming on, and no, we're gonna wait. We're gonna wait for you to get him on a line, then we'll draft the player.
Yeah, literally. But guys, thanks. Before we get our last guest on here, 3-hour podcast that we've done. So if you guys are enjoying this stuff, go over to the YouTube side, give us some love over there, hit that subscribe button, hit that like. If you guys are enjoying the content over there, and if you guys are enjoying the live on Spreaker, you can follow us on there. Go hit up our social medias on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and then as well follow our podcast at Dog Pound Podcast. And again, we're going to do some off-season stuff. We're going to get back to doing the player interview stuff with all there was some off the ice stuff going on with the team, so we didn't want to bother the players at that time. But we'll plan on doing more player interviews throughout the off season.
For sure, the new guys too. We got to get the new ones on, like Dickinson and he. We'll have to see if we can get them on the show. But yeah, shout outs to Spreaker. I mean, Spreaker's come a long way. We've used this app for years. They are now partnered with iHeartRadio, which is a big partnership. So if you guys haven't already, this is where, I mean, we don't usually do this live on this app, but for other shows on the network and stuff, this is a big part of the network. So you can either follow it on a web browser or download it on Apple or Android devices. And that's Spreaker. That's basically the word speaker, but with an R after the P. So Spreaker.
Before the P.
Before the P. Yeah, sorry. Wait, did I say before the P or after the P?
You said it like after.
It is after. The R is after the P.
Oh, yeah. Duh. I'm giving...
Spreaker.
Yeah, literally. But no, all of our audio podcasts will be up on Spreaker on demand for you guys to listen to. All of we're not in video form today because of all the guest callers.
Or if you like the other apps, like Spotify is a great one, Apple Podcasts, those are like
podcasts, iHeartRadio, Castbox, and Deezer.
iHeartRadio, man, wow.
Yeah, literally everything. So, guys, it's almost that time. So I'm going to get going here. If you guys have enjoyed this,
the horror robot, here he comes.
Last one of the day for you guys.
Why is North Bay taking so long with this pick?
Maybe they're taking a timeout.
I imagine they would have had to. This has been a long time since I've seen something go through.
Yeah, so
unless there's a trade to announce.
I doubt it. So 6. Oh, I shouldn't read the guy's phone number.
You said 6. Everyone write it down.
Yeah. So as we transfer our last guest here. Niagara's picking at 187, and we're still at, what, 185?
184.
184, okay. So a little bit of ways to go here for Niagara, and again, we'll have to interrupt our guest to make that pick, but we've been doing it all show, so I'm sure it'll be nothing new for anyone listening today, and we'll make sure to get you that. That'll probably be the last pick that will be, maybe we'll get the 207 before the show ends today, but we'll have to see how that goes, but if not, at least we've gotten through most of the picks with you guys 10 today.
10 rounds, man. 10 rounds.
Now you've reached my cell phone. Please leave a name and a number, and I'll get back to you right away.
Wow. You
left
were
on voicemail.
Whoa. Yes.
Wow.
Left on voicemail. That's a heartbreaker.
Yep. Straight to voicemail.
Oof.
What a guy. That was our first. That's a first for us today. I guess the last guest is going to decide to stiff us. So. That's okay.
I'm going to say no, and he's just not looking at his phone.
Yeah.
He's like, you know what? Screw those Dog Pound podcast guys. I don't like their show. Let's stiff them.
Yeah, literally. But we'll try again. You guys are going to get one more.
The robots now. North Bay still hasn't picked.
Well, what is going on? Do they even know they're on the clock? Like, is it going to expire?
Are they doing a lunch break?
Yeah, literally. But yeah, I mean,
the hotline's going.
I don't. Has anyone gotten has anyone gone this long without not picking?
Not from looking at the board all day today. No.
Nobody else. Everybody's got their stuff together.
Everyone's just sending picks through. I don't know, North Bay, they're sleeping.
They're sleeping.
There's a hotline. Let's see if the hotline works now.
Thrive Fantasy Hotline. It's got to come in big. Let's see.
I've reached my cell phone. Please
Oh!
leave a name and the number.
Oh,
No way. Are we getting stamped?
I mean, he just texted me about 10 minutes ago. So
He falls asleep like North Bay. Is he picking for North Bay?
I don't know. He might be in the draft. I don't
Is he
know.
in the draft room for North Bay right now?
No, I don't know if he's doing something at the Meridian Center right now because he is
Oh.
an employee. But I'll just await to see kind of where he's at. I'll wait for him to text me, and we'll
He's
just kind of
taking as long to answer the phone as North Bay is taking the pick.
literally.
Because North Bay still has not picked yet.
Does North Bay know they're on the like North Bay?
We know you're in the playoffs, but
Let's go here, gentlemen. Like, what are you doing?
the bells are ringing. Let's go. Unless they're going to trade it. Unless they're talking to a team they're looking to trade. Just trade it away.
Yeah.
Can you imagine it's Niagara talking to them and it was a long conversation. We're going to pick at 184. We moved up 3 spots in the 10th round.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the first pick in the 10th round, so I would think there's like a lunch break. They have to pick everything and then you can eat, right? There's no way they just stop and say there's a lunch break.
I don't think anybody wants to stop. I think they'd rather get it over with.
Right? Like at this point in the draft, like you have 5 rounds left, just fire through.
Yeah. It's like us with our fantasy drafts. We take a break in between. We're not going to take a break in the 20th round when we're at get to round 25, Doesn't make any sense.
I don't know.
But looking at the IceDogs for next year, I mean, they're going to have to fill that void with Daniil Gushin. Again, I mean, he is eligible to come back, but I mean, at this point, he's playing for the San Jose Barracuda right now, the American Hockey League. I don't think the Sharks are going to
scoring
send him back.
that many goals in the OHL. The man looked light years ahead sometimes of some of the players on the ice.
And he only played 51. He missed 17 games. So if he could have gotten to 60 goals if he would have played all 68 games.
Oh, he would have pulled an Austin Matthews. Gotcha.
Yeah, sure. And even guys like Sirazati and Michaud that came in, I think those, like Steve mentioned, those were key acquisitions as guys to kind of come in and fill those top 6 roles when the IceDogs had so many young players to kind of have to. They needed somebody to lean on a little bit. Again, those guys aren't old, like they're not overage players, but at least they have some experience.
They'll be looked at as veterans next year, and I think they're good. They're going to be key pieces in the top 6, 100%. You got and like Panofemis, like it was like Steve Clark mentioned as well. Like these players, the second half of the season had such a growth that you would like to see. And like Panofemis was one of those players. I know he mentioned Alec Leonard and a couple other players, but the one I've seen the most was Panofemis, who's really now coming to his own as a player that's going to lead this team going into next year. So. He's got to be your number 1 center at least going into next year and to really carry this team. And now with these other players coming in, like a Kevin He, who's probably not going to be in the top. I mean, you never know. Watch this Kevin He kid comes in training camp, exceeds expectations, finds his way in the top 6. You really don't know, right? But if he's in the bottom 6, have his first half of the season, get used to the OHL, that transition period that everybody goes through, and then finds his way into the top 6 after. But a lot of the players, rookies this year that have made that progression in the second half of the season are going to be really key players for the IceDogs going into next year.
Yeah, and it's just 71 points is going to be hard to.
I don't think anyone's going to match. You never know, but I don't think anyone's going to match that.
But you also got to look at the other teams that are like other players, like top players from other teams are going to be leaving too. So it's not like it's just the IceDogs that are losing their top player. I mean, if Shane Wright doesn't come back for Kingston, that's a huge loss for them.
McTavish won't be coming back either. I highly doubt he comes back at this point.
Yeah,
him already being drafted and now definitely like McTavish again is another player there that just looks. Oh, finally, North Bay picked. They picked a left defenseman from the Buffalo Junior Sabres, Nicholas Young.
Yeah, let's go. Following the footsteps of Anthony Agustinelli.
So Erie and Sudbury, let's go. Get us through to the Niagara pick.
Yeah. And again, a big shout out to one of our loyal listeners, Reno Berardi, for sending us some of the prospect stuff. And he also sent me some stuff on some of the prospects that the IceDogs have in the pipeline that didn't play this year. A guy like Zachary Schultz is a 2-year commitment with the U.S. National Development Program, but he's currently playing over there as a defenseman, as an 05. Giacomo Martino was another guy that we saw at training camp this year that
He looked good.
They didn't really keep statistics, but I believe he was one of the guys who was leading training camp in goals. So he was another guy to look for. And then I keep bringing back to this guy, but it's so incredible that a hockey player from Tennessee is going to play in the Ontario Hockey League. That's Cole Bishop, who they just signed late into the year, so that he will be here for next year. He's smaller-ish kid, but this guy's got all the skill in the world, and if he's able to come up here to Ontario and light it up, he could be the next sensation from Tennessee, and just
that would be something.
Yeah, I mean, look what the Nashville Predators have been able to do. Get people interested in hockey, and it's become a good hockey. You have players like this who grew up wanting to play hockey in that area, not just other sports like baseball and football.
Niagara's on the clock, by the way, finally. So Sudbury and Erie took their players. Sudbury taking Marshall McCharles, what a name, at 186. But now Niagara's on the clock, so I think we're gonna get the pick before we get to a call. It's the first today, a first.
Yeah. We're just waiting here. Niagara on the clock, so let me know when the pick's in.
I will let you know when the pick's in, because now I can not. I felt like saying I didn't want to interrupt our guest today. Like, the pick went with a lot of our guests, and I'm like, I don't want to, like, they're having some great insight here. I don't want to be like, oh, by the way, shut up for 2 seconds while we do the pick.
Yeah, so that's why I had the draft thing up, so then I would look to see if they took, so then I would play the draft sound so that you would know, okay, now,
Yeah.
But I'm sure our guests appreciate that. But Niagara's on the clock here, still waiting for 187.
Please don't take as much time as North Bay did.
I hope not, because then we won't have enough time for our guests. So hopefully
what a team! So Marshall McCharles comes from a team called the North Bay Trappers. Ooh,
the Trappers.
The Trappers. What a name! Another North York player was taken by Erie. So North York, there's 3 or 4 of these teams in the GTA that a bulk of the players come from. So it's great to see the GTA, and I think it was Austin that mentioned it, or Colin, that the GTHL has really become a very reliable draft pool. And Niagara's picked. There we go. It's a weird. It's not Brandon, but Braden, Braedon, Braden Viss. So we got another 3-letter last name. Left defenseman, 6'2", a big guy, 175 pounds, coming from the Sudbury Nickel Capital Wolves under-16 team.
Is the Nickel Capital, though.
Yeah, it is, but what a name for an under-16 team. But left defenseman, 6'2", 175 pounds, got a big body for a defenseman, but another defenseman coming into, I mean, obviously forward heavy this year, right? But defenseman also being a priority that we've mentioned a lot, but another one to add to the draft pick stockpile in Braden Viss. All right.
Yeah.
Never know. This is the guy who said he's going to be the franchise player, so write this down. When he does become it, you're going to be like, oh, remember when Kyle said that in the live show?
Yeah, literally. So we are going to add our next guest to the call here, see if he joins.
All right.
Our last guest of the day, and it's calling in through here. See if the Thrive Fantasy Hotline will work for the third time. Third time's a charm. There he is.
Hello.
So we've got.
Hello.
Hello. We've got. Hello.
Hello.
Rob, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
We're joined for our final guest of the day, and it wasn't easy, but we got him on the line. We've got the radio color commentator on GiantFM Country 89 for the Niagara IceDogs, and I love this title, Rob. This is a very fancy title. Director of Affiliate Operations and GOJHL Liaison for the Niagara IceDogs.
Wow.
Thanks, brother.
So what does that job entail, Rob? Let our listeners know what does that job title entail? What kind of stuff are you doing for the IceDogs behind the scenes with those?
Oh, I thought you were talking about my color job with the GiantFM, because I was going to say that's a tough job to be with. Ted's a great guy, love him to death.
Our first guest of the day was there with Ted Lehman. So we bookended ended the commentary team there on the radio side of things. But
Yeah.
But what do you do for the IceDogs, Rob, with as far as the kind of the player development stuff?
Yeah, so what happens is during training camp is really when my job happens. So we look at who's going to make the team, who's not going to make the team, and then who do we want to keep close or who's on the radar. And basically we place these kids either with their local junior B or junior A teams and keep some guys down here so that I monitor them. And then when there's a call-up needed or, we make player movements and to bring some of these guys in, that's kind of my job. So once training camp breaks, then my groundwork starts. I get on the pavement, I place some kids, usually the 16-year-olds, which is tough to place. We get them good spots where they're going to develop, and then some of the older kids that we want to keep on our radar, we place those kids, and then I monitor them throughout the year, and then that's kind of where my job ends. I follow up with those kids and make sure that they're getting ice time. They're being able to get developed, because if they're not, then I'll get them out of there and move them to a team that's going to develop them. So that's kind of my job. And I've been doing that for about 5 years with the IceDogs.
Awesome.
So what have you seen as far as, because a lot of these guys that are drafted, there's 15 rounds. Not all these guys are going to be able to obviously make the team right away. So they're going to have to go down and develop in these younger leagues. So what are you kind of looking for with some of these guys that they do take, and kind of where their next steps are going to be? Is there really anything tangible that you can kind of build off of here? Is it kind of really a crapshoot with these guys if they're going to really develop into professional hockey players someday, or if the OHL or Junior B would be kind of their ceiling?
Yeah. So what happens is we're in draft day right now. So I took time out to talk to you guys. So what happens is that we look and say we've got 14 forwards coming back, we've got 12 defensemen coming back, or 10 defensemen and 4 goalies, whatever the case may be, and we've just drafted 10 new players. Usually our top couple of players will end up making a team. So some of these guys we've got to find placement for, come before the season breaks, because you don't want to jump the gun, because there's kids that come into training camp and you say, wow, what happened to them? They grew over the summer. They got bigger, stronger. So really there's nothing I can do. Like draft day, they'll ask, Hubs, can we place this guy somewhere? And I'll say, yeah, we can place this guy somewhere. Can we get him close? Yes. I've got a couple of teams that I work with where I know that are going to develop these kids. There's no sense in sending a kid somewhere where he's going to sit on the bench. It does us no good. It does them no good. And it does the young man no good. So, we want to make sure that we're putting him in a good position, where he's going to develop not just as a hockey player, but as a young man.
Kyle, go ahead and take it away here.
So I do want to ask you this. We've asked our guests this throughout the day today, and obviously the IceDogs losing some key overage players in Liam Van Loon and Dakota Betts, and having to fill in those gaps with the first 2 picks yesterday, with Sam Dickinson obviously being the best defenseman available and a steal, I would say, at number 4. And then Kevin He with his prospect profile being a very speedy centerman and a guy that can put the puck in the net and has a crazy shot. Do you think those 2 picks were those picks that you guys were going for in replacing those 2 key spots?
Yeah, I mean, our first rounder, this kid's a bona fide. If in all easiness and talking about it, this kid looks like he's a pro. He's big, he's strong, he moves the puck, he's going to anchor our blue line. He can actually play next year. I think he's going to step in and put, we're going to you usually take your lumps the first couple of months, but this kid's going to be a real nice addition. And, what a young man, being chosen 4th overall in the first round. You got to be pretty excited about that. And he's strong, and he doesn't look like a 15 or 16-year-old because he's a big dude. And and Kevin He, young, dynamic, can fly, got a great shot, creates all kinds of scoring chances all over the place, right? So pretty excited about those two picks. And, our fourth round pick, our 71st pick overall, Andrew from the Niagara North Stars, a good local kid. We're going to see how that pans out for this young guy coming in, just to see if he can't steal a job.
And with this year, Rob, with so many, young players having to play prominent roles on this team, and just the amount of players that had to be called up as well. So I'm sure you were involved in that process with, trying to figure out which call-ups to make. We saw Sammy Douglas-Najim come up, Lucas Littlejohn, Tanner Ryan, Ilya Chmielewski, all these guys that did not start the year and were not projected to be on this team whatsoever last year, had to come up with the amount of injury, suspensions, games that everybody missed last year. Just how important was that for your staff to kind of go up and make sure that you guys were making those right decisions and being able to bring those guys up and having to play in such, difficult situations with 4 defensemen dressed at times this year, and just thoughts on like how they were kind of able to work through that given the tough circumstances that they were thrown into?
Yeah, well, so with Sammy, I'll speak on Sammy because if you guys were here, I coached the red-white game or the black-red game, whatever it was, and Sammy was on my team, and I loved him. He was great on the back end, and every time you chatted with him, that's why I like going on the bench, because then I can go back to to Billy or to Joey and say, hey, you know what, this kid's a great attitude, and he was close, very close, and I said he's a guy we got to keep our eye on, and he got placed, and we monitored him throughout the whole year. And then when it came time that we needed to call him up, it was, very nice. And the Little John kid, the same thing. These guys were close on making the team last year. So when that happens, you want to make sure that you're keeping a close eye on these guys, because sometimes they develop late. And you got to remember, some of these guys are still 15, 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
Like I'm still developing. I went from 160 pounds to 260 pounds. That's my development. But I mean, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm developing late in my 50s.
Yeah.
But I mean, these guys, some of these guys develop later in years, especially like with the goaltending. Look at the vision that our coaching staff and our general manager had with Rosie. Like, let's talk a little bit about Rosie, right? I mean, we had Tynan, who's, he actually was a stud, and we moved him because they had the vision that Rosie could come in and really play valuable minutes, which he did. And, he was probably, our savior, MVP at sometimes, right? And then, you've got the young Consti kid who, 16-year-old kid, made some great starts and played some great games. So from the back end, that was fantastic. And that's having that third goaltender, right? And where you're developing these players. And I think our coaching staff did a great job. And I say that with a clear conscience, clear heart. Our coaching staff did a great job with those kids and with this team. I mean, what vision Joey Burke had with the Van Loon kid. Nobody wanted him. Joey went and got him, and he was probably our best player if when Gushin was not in the lineup. And I mean, those two kids were probably our best players an awful lot of time, right?
100%.
Kyle, do you have anything else for our guest today?
I do want to touch base a little bit on Pano Femus. I think we touched base on it earlier that I think he had an incredible second half of the season with improving in his game and really solidifying himself as most likely the number one guy next year and the number one center you build the team around. How impressive have you been with his second half of the season, and even that led him to making the under-18 Team Canada team?
Yeah, so Femus, one of my favorite players. He reminds me of Stevie Yzerman, the way he plays the game, and I'm not trying to put the pressure on that he's the next Stevie Yzerman, but he's a right-handed shot, sees the ice, can score goals. He mixes it up a little bit. He's going to have more sandpaper this year because he wants to be a pro. If you want to be a pro, you got to have that sandpaper. I love Femus. I think that was a great pick for us. And he's only going to get better. And I loved his development. And once again, when you see a kid develop like that, there's two things that happen. It's because the coaching staff did a great job bringing those kids along, right? I mean, when a kid develops, it just doesn't happen overnight. It happens in practice. So you've got Teeks and Jody Hall, and you've got Billy Burke working with these kids, and Zen and Konopka, and they're going to get better. And when they get better, that shows that you develop them. And I love Femus. I'm glad you guys brought it up. And he's coming in as the number one guy.
Great stuff as always, Rob Hubbard, again from the Niagara IceDogs, and again he's the radio color commentator for GiantFM Country 89 for the Niagara IceDogs home games, alongside the voice of the Niagara IceDogs, Ted Lehman, and I'm sure you have a hard job doing that with Ted being a handful at times. So
no, hey guys, Ted's a great guy.
Oh yeah,
he brings cookies. And if you've seen me, I haven't missed too many meals lately. So I love cookies, and his wife is a wonderful cook. So
we got to get some. We got to get some cookies, Brian.
Well, and he's supposedly got butter tarts, and he left today without leaving the butter tarts with me. So I'm a little ticked off at him.
How rude!
I'm just joking, right? Because I don't want one; I want 3 of them. So
yeah. How rude of him. But Rob, thanks a lot for coming on and giving us some great insight, obviously, with your liaison experience with the IceDogs and your great work as well. So thanks again for getting out of the draft room to join us for about 10 minutes today. And we'd love to have you back on again in the off season to discuss more about this team moving forward.
Absolutely. Anytime, guys. And you guys do a great job. Thanks for all that you guys do, promoting us and keeping things positive, because that's where you want to go. You want to keep things positive and moving forward. And thanks very much for covering our team the way you do. I know it doesn't go unnoticed. And BC, I love you. You're a great guy. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks a lot, Rob. And yes, the future is bright for the IceDogs moving forward here, and we'll look forward to next season. The one and only Rob Hubbard joins us as our last guest on today's OHL Draft Show. Thanks a lot, Rob.
Thanks very much. Love. It was great. Thanks, guys. Ciao.
Thanks, Rob.
See ya.
So, Rob Hubbard joins us as our last guest today.
And as the last pick for today's show comes in right at the end. I don't know if you want to hit the music.
Oh, sure. Why not?
So the IceDogs in the 11th round at 207 out of the Toronto Marlboros under 16 team take Matthew Little, right winger. 5'11", 152 pounds. Not little at all. I mean, that's still a big size. So Matthew Little, a forward coming into the group.
There we go. So they finally, well, actually, they had already taken a right winger with Kwishi Han, but no right defenseman today. But again, that's okay. Maybe we'll see it late. But yeah, so as far as the draft pick distribution goes, as we wrap up here, we got about 5 minutes left on the show. 3 left defensemen, 2 right wingers, 2 left wingers, 1 center, and 1 goaltender. So good distribution there, except for no right defenseman. But again, you never know. Maybe somebody will move over. Maybe they've got something up their sleeve. Maybe they've got some right D through the pipeline that they want to sign as undrafted players. You never know. You never know what can happen in the Ontario Hockey League. Like some of our guests mentioned, you never thought that you would see forwards playing defense in some of these games, like we saw throughout the years with the IceDogs. But it's always great stuff. And again, we had 6 great guests on today, Kyle. Just before we wrap up the show today, I want to give a thank you to Ted Lehman, the radio voice of the Niagara IceDogs since the team's inception in 2007. We had Colin Ward from the OHL and 60 podcast. We had Austin Broad from FC Hockey and the Charging Buffalo with a great prospect analysis as well. We had Bill Potrecz from BP Sports Niagara, does great local coverage of sports and has been a longtime IceDogs media member and covering junior B hockey as well. And then we also had Steve Clark, the TV play-by-play voice of the Niagara IceDogs since its inception as well, and great play-by-play voice for the McMaster Marauders as well. Mm-hmm. And then we finished off today with Rob Hubbard, who is the radio color commentator and also GOJHL Liaison, working currently for the Niagara IceDogs. So, Kyle, just great stuff from our 6 guests today throughout the 3 hours, and hopefully our viewers enjoyed that.
Yeah, this was fun to do, guys. Again, we always like to do stuff like this at special times, and especially covering this team at draft time, which is very awesome to do. And then we're going to do our best to continue with this coverage, right? We did our first training camp last year. We're going to do it again this year, create some more content. Hopefully this year we'll get some video content. as we'll hopefully be allowed to do that and do some fun things while being at training camp this coming off season.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And again, we'll try to get the player interviews. We'll try to get some of these drafted players onto the show, or at least do something with them to get them accustomed to Niagara a little bit and know what it's going to be like to be down here with this rabid fan base who, again, just going off of what last season was what it was and it ended, but just that crowd, the final game of the season, Kyle, I know it was in a loss to Barrie and the game didn't mean anything for either team, but the fact that they still had a crowd come out and support this team, a community's team, the region's team, just, again, even through these 2 tough years that we've had, they've still supported this team through some very, very low, very big lows, not a lot of highs. But it looks like, the horizon is looking great for this young IceDogs group, and hopefully the fan support will be there again next year for hopefully our first playoffs covering the team as media members, because when we used to be fans of this team, going to those games were just something special at the Jack and even at the Meridian Center. So we're hoping that we can kind of create that same atmosphere, and the IceDog fans will stick with this team and these young kids moving forward, because it is a very exciting group.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, we got about 4 minutes left. I don't know if there's anything else, or we just wrap it up now. Is Niagara even in the vicinity?
No, I think we wrap it up now, and then I'm just excited now. Just excited for this offseason, the content we're going to provide for you guys, and then going into next year's training camp to see how these rookies look.
Yeah, it's I'm excited for this crop. I really like getting Sam Dickinson at 4 was just a home run for me already. Like that was the guy that I was hoping that Niagara's going to take. Obviously, like Michael Meese is great and everything, but I think having that defenseman to kind of lean on and it just adds more depth to this decor, right? Like you already have guys like Isaac Enright, you have the Alec Leonards, the Andrew Weiss, the Lannon Catos, whoever else they end up getting, but having that guy as somebody that they can really build around and kind of slowly build up into hopefully a top pair defenseman in his second year. I think this year is going to be very important for him as a rookie, but I really like the fact that again that they took those two, especially those two guys, Dickinson and he. I think those are two guys that we're going to see as impact players on the IceDogs roster as early as next season, but don't want to put too much pressure on them. Probably 2023, 24 season, I would say you'd see Kevin He and Sam Dickinson making big impacts on this team, because like you keep mentioning and asking our guests, losing out on Liam Van Loon and Dakota Betts overagers, that's a lot of leadership that leaves that room, and a lot of top end skill, and a lot of guys that relied upon. And then obviously Daniil Gushin as the leading scorer. If he's not back in junior hockey next year, somebody else is gonna have to step up, but they've got the players to be able to do that. And hopefully Panofemis, Aiden Castle, and those guys kind of take that next step. But guys, that's going to wrap it up for our 3-hour special of our Dog Pound podcast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that, our day 2 draft special. And thank you to all 6 of our guests as well for joining us. And to you guys listening on YouTube and Spreaker for joining us for another edition of the Dog Pound podcast right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. And again, stay tuned for more content going forward in the offseason, and hopefully a lot of big stuff going into next season as well. Make sure you're following us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And make sure you're following this show's podcast at Dog Pound Podcast and checking out our website, armchairgmsports.com. So finally, to you viewers out there for tuning in and listening along for this episode, and IceDog fans, bark, 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 go Dogs, go. We'll see you guys again very soon.
Bye.